across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. Just after 1 o'clock on Wednesday, August the 19th. I'm David Bull in for Ian Collins. Week 2, I was here last week and all this week as well. And thank you very much indeed for your company. Let's look at the news headlines making the news this very hour. Well, a French politician in charge of the Calais region has demanded, wait for this, that British taxpayers cough up even more cash, branding the UK a permanent attraction for migrants. But is he wrong? As Andy Burnham marks 1 month in Downing Street tomorrow, scrutiny is growing over his flagship Number 10 North project, with critics questioning whether shifting growth powers to Manchester amounts to real reform or just a costly gimmick. And Labour's net zero obsession is costing families over £500 each a year. That's according to the Conservative Party, with a new analysis putting the total cost of the policy at £320 billion by 2050. And those are the stories making the news this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. It's Hump Day. It's Wednesday. I hope you're very well indeed. Thank you very much indeed for your company. I'm delighted to say I'm joined this afternoon by Chloe Dobbs, political commentator, Week 2, Chloe.
Afternoon. Good to have you back again.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you very much indeed. Now, over the last 2 weeks, I've spoken a lot about immigration. It's the one topic, I keep saying actually, at the next general election, it will be the #1 issue as to how people vote. So just in terms of what Burnham has to do, he has to show delivery. 3,000 illegal migrants have come here since his tenure began, which isn't even a month, it's a month tomorrow. And now this big story, a French politician in charge of the area around Calais has demanded that we cough up even more cash. This is Javier Bertrand. He is the regional president of Hauts-de-France. He branded the UK a permanent attraction for migrants. Now, he demanded the 2003 Le Touquet deal, and that's the deal that allows UK border force officers to work in France and vice versa, to be paid in full price, which made me rather quizzical. He then compared the French coast to Ceuta, where 72,000 migrants stormed the border last month, and he blamed Britain for camps and smugglers by the sea. Now, is he wrong? Because one of the things that I keep thinking, we've got all these people in France desperate to get over to the United Kingdom. We know there are pull factors. We talked about it yesterday. Why are they so desperate to come here and not stay in the land of baguettes and Gauloises?
I think that this often gets oversimplified, and they say it's just because we've got nicer hotels and more money available and it's really hard to get deported there. That absolutely is a pull factor, and when he says the UK is an attraction, I think he is right in that sense. But it is more complicated than that. So one of the reasons why they don't want to claim asylum in France is because it's part of the EU, where they can be sent back to the first country in the EU that they stepped foot in. And you'll speak to some migrants who might say, I don't mind France, but they've got my fingerprints over in Bulgaria and the police beat us up there and we don't want to risk being sent back there. So we want to get out of the EU and come to Britain. Another thing that I also came across in Calais, which I thought was very strange, and I couldn't understand how this could possibly be legal, was we spoke to several migrants in independent conversation, not linked together, who told us the reason we're going to the UK is because we've been given what they were calling deportation letters by the French, saying you have 7 days to leave the country, get out. No flight to send them somewhere. And it's not like these people have claimed asylum and then been rejected. They say, we haven't applied for asylum yet, but they've just given us this letter and we don't understand, but hence we're trying to get on a boat to get to Britain.
So is that just forceful tactics by the French, do you think?
Possibly. Now, to me, it seemed almost too good to be true, because I thought surely that's against human rights laws, surely they have to give them the chance to claim asylum. But then when I heard it in independent conversations, I thought, that's really weird. Is this something illegal that the French are doing to try and force them over to Britain?
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary, just the amount of money we've spent. We spent £476 million between 2023 and 2026. We then owe £662 million. Of that, only £161 million is contingent on results. As I said yesterday, who would sign that kind of deal?
I know Shabana Mahmood keeps boasting that this new deal is absolutely amazing and it's going to turn things around because it's linked to performance. It's barely linked to performance at all. She kept begging the French for a deal.
16% of it.
Yeah, she was begging the French for a deal that's properly linked to performance, and they said, oh no, because we can't possibly be in a position where we're possibly putting the migrants in danger by stopping them from getting on these boats. You know, they might get their toes wet when we take them off the boat or something. So we best not have it linked to performance because we've got to put human rights first at the front of the deal. So it's just most of the money you get no matter what, and you might get a little bit of a bonus. And that bonus, the 160-odd million, there's no metric that they've even decided upon, no particular percentage of boat crossings stopped. So it's just if we decide we think they've done a good enough of a job. And what kind of a deal is that?
It's a terrible deal.
No one in business would sign a deal like that.
Absolutely right, and that's the bit I can't understand. And also, when you actually just look at what Bertrand said, I actually think he's got a few very good points. He says the British state is to blame for the crisis. We don't enforce our own regulations. I would agree with that. I think we are a soft touch. He says migrants exploited by smugglers and criminals do not want to settle in Hauts-de-France. Their goal is to come to England because when you're a migrant here, you can work. We talked about this, the black economy. The fact is you can disappear underground. You can still work, even though you're not meant to work. You can be exploited, he goes on to say, by numerous companies under conditions that few can imagine. He says the British state is not powerless. It simply fails to organise its controls effectively and doesn't rigorously enforce its own regulations. I think he's got a point.
I think he does have a point. And when Macron came here and visited Starmer, and he said to us, oh, yes, maybe we need to do more to stop the boats, but you Brits need to do something to stop the pull factors, he did have a point there.
Yeah.
And the government is boasting that the percentage of asylum claims that gets rejected is up, but how many of those people are actually going to get deported? I think it's only about 10% of people with rejected asylum claims that ever get kicked out. So people in France thinking of coming across, they think, well, there's barely anything to lose here. The chances of being deported or sent back on this one-in, one-out deal where we've barely sent anyone back to France are so slim.
Oh, we sent back 1,000 out of 28,000.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic, isn't it?
It's appalling.
If you come here and your asylum claim gets rejected, then you can just work in the black market. You can work illegally at a vape shop or a barber shop or dealing drugs.
Yeah, or delivery drivers.
Exactly.
Do you know, I actually stopped someone from a delivery company and I looked at their ID badge, and the ID badge was a man and this was a woman.
Oh,
who appeared with the food. So clearly you are not acting within the law. We know what's going on there, and I want to understand why the delivery company, I won't name them, but why are they not actually enforcing checks?
Well, if they're making money, they don't care. Now, they would care if there was actually tough enforcement. After there were a couple of different journalists from different papers went and did these investigations at the migrant hotels, where they're run by the Home Office, there are government staff there, and there are all of these bikes parked outside for all the different delivery companies, and the Home Office don't seem to do anything about it. That was all exposed, and then the Home Office thought, oh, we better say something. So they say, oh, we're going to crack down, we're going to send directors of these companies potentially to prison and fine them 60 grand per illegal worker. I think they've fined one guy, I think it was 28 quid.
Right, brilliant.
So, amazing.
Well, so the quote from the Home Office today is, we're committed to working with France and other international partners. I mean, it means absolutely nothing. It's absolute bunkum. We are trying to prevent illegal migration and the people exploiting national borders. Actually, Labour MP Sam Rushworth spoke to Jeremy Kyle on The Breakfast Show earlier today. Let's have a listen to what he said about the amount of illegal immigration in the UK and that question I just put to Chloe, why they are specifically coming to Britain. Have a look.
I think what we do need to look at is what are the pull factors, and I think there's two big pull factors. One is that they speak the English language, you know, because we spent a couple of centuries going around the world colonising it and teaching everyone our language.
There's the reason that the Labour Party will forever allow people to come to this country.
They've got a network of people that speak our language, and the other is that there is a black economy, and we need to deal with the black economy.
OK, so you couldn't hear that, but he said two things. One is they come here because they speak English and because it's our fault. It's our fault because we went around the world colonising the world. So that's why they come here. That's the first thing he said. They speak English. And then the second one was he said they are pulled by the black economy, the point that I made earlier. What do you make of the fact that they speak English?
Well, I think when you've seen a lot of people go out to Calais and do interviews
they don't
at these
speak
places,
English.
they don't speak English and they can't without a translator. That was my experience when I went over to Calais.
What was it like going over there?
It was very interesting, I have to say. So we went to Syria, then Lebanon, then Italy, then Calais. So we
on a fact-finding mission.
Yes, and this was a Channel 4 show. It was sort of a bit of a reality show where we were put through simulations, put on small boats. We didn't know we were in a simulation. We thought we were going to die. It was all very exciting. But Calais was actually arguably scarier than being in Syria, where we were worried about ISIS finding us, because those camps in Calais were absolutely terrifying. Not only were they more disgusting than some of the places that people lived in the third world, it was, I mean, when you see it on TV, it's not smell-o-vision, you can't smell it. I mean, those warehouses, absolutely horrific, but there were dodgy gangsters, these smuggling gangs, going around. We had to abandon one of our interviews midway through and suddenly get in the car and go, because we could see the gangsters turning up, making phone calls. More and more people started appearing, looking at us, taking pictures of us, and we were like, we're out of here. They were also trying to get into our car, because our car had a GB sticker on, where we'd parked up to then get out and do some filming. So it's pretty sketchy in those places.
And was there any sign of authority or police?
No. There were sort of two teams, and one of the teams did go out during the night time and go on the beach. And the French police, who knew that they were coming, I think thought, oh, let's put on a show of force for Channel 4 because the cameras are out and make it look like we're doing. So they got the tear gas out, they slashed one of the boats for the cameras. But I'm not sure that's how it works when the cameras are away.
Sure that's right.
Yeah.
So it was life-changing?
Yeah, it was so interesting. And those reasons I explained to you as to why people are coming to Britain, I was guilty of oversimplifying before I went there. And I spoke to these people.
Really want to
and
go,
a lot
actually.
of them I understand why they are coming, and I blame the system rather than them. A lot of them I do feel sorry for, but also you've got to bear in mind when you go and talk to these people, are the people who are running from crimes like murder going to say, yeah, I'll do a TV interview and talk to you? No, they're not.
Yeah.
So you often get the nicer ones of them who come and talk to you.
I'm sure that's right. Interestingly, there's a big poll out about the British attitude towards the French. And when you look at this poll, more Britons believe that efforts to stop small boat crossings are more likely to succeed by standing up to France. Essentially what these people are saying is it's time we were much stronger, much more bullish with France than literally towing the line at the moment. And the question I have for you, I suppose, and everyone listening and watching at home, are the French to blame for what's going on?
Yes. Not entirely, but in part, significantly so. Yes, of course, we've got a lot of pull factors here that we've discussed, but why are we handing a single penny to the French if they are not...
1.1 billion?
I know. Why are we handing any of that money to them if they are seemingly spending it not on stopping the boats, but providing a taxi service to Border Force in the middle of the channel? All of the money seems to go into, you go down to the beach, they've got the police there just watching and making sure they get into the boats alive. You've got lifeboat services there also making sure they've got life jackets and then they're safe. And then you've got the French Navy escorting them all to Border Force where they are safely handed over. Our money shouldn't be going on that. I mean, after that video came out from Chris Philp where you've got the gendarmerie just saying we're ordered not to intervene and just to let them go, the government should be saying that's it, not a single penny for France anymore.
Totally
but
right.
they're not willing to be tough enough.
And we spoke about this yesterday. As you say, it's like a taxi service. So the migrants wait at different points and the boats go along and they pick them up.
And I'm convinced that that's where our money is going, is on the taxi service. The French probably aren't paying for that service out of their own money. They're spending our money on that.
Chloe, thank you for the moment. Let me throw that out to you this afternoon. Very simple question this afternoon. Are the French to blame for this? 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. So, are the French to blame? Short answer, yes. This is Talk.
we have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 118. Right, tomorrow, can you believe this, marks 1 month since Andy Burnham has been Prime Minister. And if his Instagram account is anything to go by, buses are still very much on his mind. Let's have a look about how obsessed Andy Burnham is with buses.
Some rules you look at and just think, how can that be fair? One of them is the 9:30 a.m. restriction on disabled people's bus passes. More local buses are coming under public control. These buses, very soon, are going to be back under public control.
So Andy Burnham loves a bus. So the question, Chloe, is, Andy Burnham, what has he ever done for us in a month?
Not anything, really. He's stopped the barbecues. He's not stopped the boats, but he's stopped the barbecues.
He made me crash my car,
man.
Almost, when that alert went off.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Probably... I'd be interested to hear from the NHS if it caused any heart attacks.
Well,
in elderly people who were... I nearly had a heart attack when it happened. I thought, gosh, there's a nuclear weapon coming our way.
Well, I saw other people swerve their cars as well at the same time. So obviously these people were... Also, I got 4, but anyway, that's another story.
Nearly crashed a plane as well. Someone apparently was on a plane literally about to land. I think it was Heathrow or Gatwick, and suddenly everyone's... And the pilot and the staff, and also... weren't expecting this. Nobody was told about this.
So dangerous.
They all thought it was some kind of alert on the plane and they were about to crash into the runway. So he's caused some heart attacks. Yeah. He's stopped the barbecues.
He's got number 10 in the north.
So he's got an office block that looks like some school classrooms.
Yes.
Nowhere near as classy as what we've got here in London.
Quite.
So he probably hasn't learned, him and his staff probably haven't learned anything from the north by being shipped there on, in private cars and on private jets. He's probably added some emissions to the air in that process. And he's spoken a lot about buses because...
A lot.
I think he doesn't realise that he's Prime Minister. He still thinks that he's a mayor. He thinks he's just the mayor of Britain, not the Prime Minister of Britain. So he thinks that just talking about bus fares is suddenly going to make his popularity go soaring, and if he just completely ignores all the issues that people actually care about.
He's going to make it easier to cancel subscriptions.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
It's going to save you, what, like £12?
I mean...
Maybe.
Does it mean that it's just one less click to cancel these things?
I mean,
it's really going to change my life.
It is, actually. He says it is.
And it seems that him and his government are still pushing ahead with opening 3 MOD sites that are going to be right next to villages where they're going to put about 1,200 random men, undocumented men.
In a village of 400.
Exactly. And 2 out of 3 of those are less than a mile from a primary school. One of them is less than a mile from a primary school, a nursery and a playground. So absolutely fantastic. And he doesn't want to talk about it at all.
No, he doesn't. But Andy Burnham says number 10 North will take over responsibility for economic growth from the Treasury. He says this is going to be a huge transfer of power out of Whitehall. He said he's very worried about the Treasury's traditional dual role, i.e. promoting economic growth on one hand and then also controlling the public finances. He says the great panacea to this is going to be number 10 North. Now, by the way, this is not a new idea. It was done in 1964 under the Wilson government, and he set up the Department for Economic Affairs for exactly the same reason, which was to develop longer-term economic growth, bypass, and I'm quoting, traditional conservative policy making of the Treasury. It lasted until 1969.
Presumably because it didn't work very well.
Presumably.
So he's just rehashing a bunch of old ideas that didn't work at all. Sounds like a brilliant idea. And also, why does it matter where the staff are located? Why does it matter if they are here or they are in Manchester? It's just a total gimmick. And think how much time is going to be wasted by these politicians and these staff going back and forth between Manchester. That's time that you could spend at your desk figuring out how to grow the economy. And if it's the public money that they're spending, they'll give people a black cab all the way to Manchester, which will cost an absolute fortune, just completely taking the mick. They're not going to be going on public transport, are they?
No, they're not. Let's move on to another story which seems to be picking up steam. I've seen it in a number of places. But this is the story that Tim Montgomery, founder of Conservative Home, has been suspended from Reform UK after hitting out at leader Nigel Farage. Now, he then made a video, and here is his own announcement.
Overnight, Reform Party suspended me. This process was supposed to be kept confidential. That was stated very clearly in the email I received. But my suspension was leaked to the Guido Fawkes website. And I swear to God it wasn't me. Someone in Reform must have done that. So the process has unfortunately become public. I have a right to appeal to that process, and I am going to exercise it. Over the last 2 years, I have given everything really to support Reform, and if they want to kick me out, they're going to have to kick me out after an argument.
And it's worth just saying that is his side of the story. Now, he accused Nigel Farage of having a woman problem and hit out at the leader's angry and aggrieved tone following the Clacton by-election victory. Reform believes that Montgomery has briefed journalists about a rift between Farage and Zia Youssef, the party's Home Affairs spokesman. The whole thing is really unedifying. Your thoughts?
I think that to suspend his membership, which I believe is what has happened, seems a little bit over the top.
Does
now,
it?
If you listen to the interview that he gave, and also the Spectator interview that came out after he was suspended, he seems very critical of Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef for someone who was not in a formal role in the party, but
that's right, no formal role,
speaking to them regularly, advising them. I could understand if after that they decided, look, you can't be airing this dirty laundry out in public. If you're going to have some sort of role in the party, we don't need your advice anymore. We won't be hanging around with you anymore. But to say that you can't be a member of the party and criticise the party publicly, to me seems very strange.
But he's in a very different position, isn't he? Because obviously he's high profile, he's on all the media outlets. I mean, look, obviously I have no formal role within the party. I know an awful lot about the party and the inner workings of that party. I would no more go on air and talk about issues or the triumphs of the party than I would fly through the air, because I think it's between me and the party.
Well, Tim he's a journalist, and when it came, same with the Conservative Party, and Nigel knew about this before. You know, Tim said, "Do you really want me?" With the Conservative Party, I've supported them, but being very critical of them where I see fit. And Nigel said that he was up for having that kind of criticism. And I'm a member of the Reform Party, but if I
didn't know that.
If I want to criticise them here, I should think I'd be able to do so. Because at the end of the day, if I'm criticising them, it's not because I don't like the Reform Party. I'm the same.
You want it to be better.
Yes, I'm criticising. It's constructive criticism. And Tim, even in that video, after being kicked out, he said at the end, "I still really want Reform to triumph."
He did.
So I
think. Or do you think that the management, the inner workings, are a little too sensitive?
I think that they can be a little bit too sensitive, and I think that to some people this will make them look a little bit cult-like if they are, as I said, not removing someone from a position. If this was an MP who is a loose cannon, who can't obey the whip, I could understand them saying, that's it, you've lost the whip, you can be an independent MP now. But to revoke someone of their membership over constructive criticism of the party, I think was a bit much. He also did point out that the criticisms that he made publicly are ones that he had constantly spoken to them about in private before going public about them. I think that's important.
Do you think Reform UK has a woman problem?
No, I don't think so. I think that when Tim was talking about that, he was saying that Nigel appeared more irate when he was asked questions by a female journalist. I think that was more so about the contents of the question than who was asking the question.
Or the outlet, or the media outlet,
yes.
and the direction of
so
the question.
I think that criticism was misplaced. I don't think they've got a women problem at all.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Obviously, Reform is a young party. I know that more than anyone, having been there since the inception of that party. How do you think this is going to play out?
I don't think it's really going to affect them publicly very much amongst the general public. You saw this when we had, right before the local elections last year, Rupert Lowe got kicked out of the party. A lot of people didn't like how they dealt with that. They thought it was messy. Rupert Lowe was putting out all these tweets right before those local elections that appeared on Twitter to be going super viral, and everyone thought, oh gosh, is this going to affect the local election results? Didn't really affect them at all. They won a lot of seats, did absolutely brilliantly, and then there was some polling done, I can't remember who, on what proportion of Reform members and the general public actually knew who Rupert Lowe was, and it was tiny.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a poll out today where Reform is back on top, up 2 points. So we're in a state of flux anyway, so as far as I can see, it's had absolutely no bearing on it. It depends when the groundwork was done.
A good proportion of the general public know who Tim Montgomery is.
I would agree with that too. Let's move on. This is my favourite story of the day, actually. The new farming minister fainted when he visited a refrigerated storage unit full of beef. Stephen Morgan had been on a tour of farms and suppliers since he was appointed, but he fell ill when stepping into the room filled with shelves of meat from slaughtered cattle at a food processing plant. It's not a great look, really, is it, for a farming minister?
It's not a great look in that it makes him look weak, but...
Well,
to his defence, he does claim that it was the change of temperature, and it has been very hot, so he might have been sweltering outside.
Maybe.
And then, you know, when you stand up too quickly and you suddenly feel faint, it might have been that. Also, absolutely stinks rooms of raw beef. I don't
I don't think the farmers were terribly impressed, were they?
No, especially if you're going to be farming minister. It gives the impression that we've got a weak government with weak ministers.
Well, that's it, right. Now, let's move on to Britain's most mispronounced word. Now, segue, charcuterie and quinoa are on this list of 10 items that trip up adults. Now, another one, acai, which I didn't know how to pronounce that one. What else is on here? Quinoa, gnocchi and Worcestershire. Now, there's a quiz, isn't there, in the Telegraph? You did quite well.
I did okay. 17 out of 19.
Yeah.
You got 16, was it?
I got 16.
Everyone seems to be getting 16
Finn,
in
the
this
producer,
office.
got 16,
yeah.
I think. Did you get 16? Yeah, 16.
Yeah, well, all of us were pretty close to all correct. There were some of them there where it was 2 options, and I was quite shocked that there are actually people who would select the other option. So similarly, apparently some people say simile, for example.
Well, that's something different, yeah. Do you know this was...
Entrepreneur, apparently some people can't pronounce that one.
It's French, isn't it? Remember, George Bush said the problem with the French is there's no such word as entrepreneur, but anyway. Also, this was commissioned by Skoda. Now, when I was a kid, it was called Skoda, but apparently it's not. It's called Skoda.
Yeah, see, when it comes to car names, I think that... It's okay for different countries to pronounce them in different ways.
Apparently,
I say
it's
Porsche,
Skoda.
even though I know it's Porsche.
No, it's Skoda because it has a hasek or a caron, and so therefore people are getting that wrong. When I was a kid, it was also Nike, and now it seems to have suddenly become Nike.
Well, see, someone actually sent a letter to the CEO of Nike with a tick box saying, can you please reply to this letter saying, does it rhyme with bike or does it rhyme with spiky, and tick the right one. He ticked spiky and sent it back to him.
Really?
So we had our conversation from the man in charge.
Well, so the other one, when I was young, was Adidas, and now suddenly that's become Adidas.
Yeah, see, again, if everyone's used to calling it Adidas, I don't think it matters that much. When it's words from other countries, if we want to pronounce them in our own way, I don't think it's
you may
that
think
big
that.
a deal.
85% of
I do
adults.
get wound up when people say paella rather than paella, though. That one annoys me.
Why does it?
Because a double L in Spanish is a Y. And that one is so terribly mispronounced.
Ooh, that sounded very snobby. Paella.
That's good.
But
that's good.
No, apparently it's really important. 85% of adults believe correct pronunciation was important. 59% of those believing it helped avoid misunderstandings.
I get more annoyed, I think, when people say there is rather than there are, and when they
Incorrect use of the singular.
And when they say less rather than fewer.
Fewer.
That winds me up more than someone saying Skoda rather than, how was it, Skoda?
Skoda.
Yeah.
You're a grammar pedant.
Possibly, you could call me that. I've mellowed a bit now. I'm a bit kinder to people than I used to be on it.
Very good. Chloe, thank you ever so much. Really good to see you this afternoon. That's Chloe Dobbs, who's a political commentator. I'm asking this afternoon, just in terms of illegal migration, here we go again. The French want more money. The really simple question behind all of this, and I was thinking about this morning, are the French the problem? Are the French to blame? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm enjoying the simplicity of my question this afternoon. Are the French to blame, generally? 0344 499 1000. Text the word Talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well, at talkTV. You can send a WhatsApp as well. Let's go back to this story about illegal immigration. Can you believe this? A French politician in charge of the area around Calais has demanded that British taxpayers cough up even more cash to send across the channel. Yes, this is Javier Bautron. He is the regional president of Hauts-de-France. He branded the UK a permanent attraction for migrants. He demanded the 2003 Le Touquet deal, which allows UK border force officers to work in France and vice versa, to be paid in its full price, whatever that means. Now, he compared it, or certainly the French coast, to Ceuta, where 72,000 migrants stormed the border last month. He blamed Britain for camps and smugglers by the sea. Now, he also went on to say that actually France should be given the power to suspend the agreement if Britain fails to deliver on deportations and smashing smuggling gangs. Now, although he asked for more money, and by the way, we've already spent close to £1.1 billion on the French, and I don't see many results as a result of all of that money, I wonder if he actually has a point. We have a pull factor. We don't seem to do anything about it. They keep coming over and no one is doing anything about it. Well, John Vine, CBE, former independent chief inspector of borders and immigration, joins me now. Good afternoon.
Hello, David.
This, it seems to be the biggest intractable problem anyone has ever come across. And what we're seeing is obviously illegal migrants still coming over to the United Kingdom. We were talking earlier on about just the scenes at Calais, people there in really rough conditions, desperate to come to the United Kingdom. We're spending £1 billion on the French, and the results don't seem to be there. Why, in your opinion, and you know a lot about this, why are people so obsessed with coming to the United Kingdom? What are those pull factors?
Well, apart from the fact that we speak English, there are lots of pull factors. The French would say that we have a thriving grey economy, legal economy. We don't have ID cards, so we don't really know who's in the country. And that's in stark contrast to every other European country, where the French check papers, and they've checked papers as part of their duties for, you know, decades. We don't have that tradition in the UK. And so it's easy for people to come to the UK and be directed by, you know, people, crime gangs into the grey economy and to earn a living here. albeit, not a legitimate living. And I think as well, we have a range of benefits, of course, that people can claim as soon as they arrive. So there's many, many factors. The Le Touquet agreement was really beneficial to the UK because basically it pushes the UK border out into France. And it prevents anybody, certainly in terms of legitimate migration, from coming to the UK unless they've been cleared. The French have always seen this, always been French politicians who've said that that actually means in practice that the French shoulder the burden of the migrants who want to come to the UK. And that's what you're seeing with this particular politician's comments. Were they made yesterday or today? I can't remember.
They were made the other... well, I think they were made yesterday, actually. But just when you look at those numbers, 80,000 illegal migrants have come here since Labour came to power, 3,000 since Burnham came to power. It doesn't seem to be abating. I just wonder also, the way that we hotel people now, the Home Office is saying, well, we have gone from 400 hotels down to 160. We've closed another 13 hotels. I mean, there is no doubt when you talk to anyone or you go to Epping or wherever, that the way we treat illegal migrants in this country is far better, in my humble opinion, than many other countries in Europe.
Yes, I think that's a pull factor. I think we do, treat people very well by and large, and we're very concerned for, dare I say it, their human rights.
Yes.
But I mean, the bottom line is as well is that the figures that we quote now are the figures we know of the people we've rescued, basically, from the Channel. But that's not the totality of legal migration into the UK. Only a couple of weeks ago, or maybe less, I think Sky did an investigation into people using the Channel Tunnel to get into the UK. And when the Le Touquet Treaty was signed in 2003, there were lots and lots of people, clinging to the underside of lorries, getting into vehicles, coming into the country that way. Now, that still happens, but we don't know those figures. We've never really known the totality of illegal migration to UK, but it's obviously far more than just the number of people that are arriving by boat. Because organised crime have chosen to use boats from 2018, we now have a figure every year that we're using, but it's not the total number of illegal migration.
There's another poll out today which shows that actually most Britons believe that France needs to do more to stop this illegal immigration crisis in this country. When you break it down, actually, it's the two main right-wing parties. They're far more likely to hold that view than the left-wing parties. So 67% of Conservative supporters, 79% of Reform UK voters. That's not surprising. But when you look at the other parties, 24% of Labour, 24% of Lib Dems, and 19% of Greens. So those parties, Labour, Lib Dem and Greens, seem to be very pro-illegal immigration, if I can put it that way.
Well, there's always been a big constituency of folk who believe that open borders is generally a good thing. And of course, remember, many migrants come to the UK and they work in sectors of the economy in the UK where it's really difficult to get Brits to work. For example, the one that springs to mind, obviously, is the care sector. So there's from an economic point of view, there are arguments for and against. The problem we have with the crossings, the illegal crossings, is that it's become a totemic issue. All countries need to protect their borders and be seen to be doing it effectively. And this is a totemic issue which basically signals to people that our border is porous and that we are struggling to actually secure it. Yeah. And whatever we do, it's difficult because the government have always relied on enforcement. That's what they're relying on all the time, enforcement, rather than actually addressing the causes of it and deterring, having some sort of deterrent, which makes, people who want to give their life savings to organised crime, think, well, there's really little point in doing that.
And of course, the ubiquity of smartphones, for example. These pictures we're looking at now, for example, where you're seeing people being successful coming across the channel, are beamed around the world. So it then sends out a very bad advert, doesn't it, to people who may think, well, maybe I'll try my chances and actually cross the channel.
Well, that's right. You see, the government would say, well, the crossings are down by 40% this year, and the figures will have shown that. But when you see a migrant boat, say, carrying these larger boats now that are being used, 250 people, then the message that's sent out, the optics for people in the UK and elsewhere, are exactly the opposite of what the government's saying about illegal migration. And therefore, it's almost encouraging people to, risk their lives in order to try and get across the channel in this way.
So can I just take you back to the point you made, and I found that very interesting, about ID cards, which are used widely across Europe. Do you think that is the panacea? I know people like myself have always been very opposed to ID cards on sort of ideological grounds. I just don't want to have to prove who I am all the time if I want to get up to some sort of skullduggery. But at the same time, if it keeps the borders safe, if it makes the country more economically prosperous, if it keeps very dangerous people out of this country, I would look at that again.
Well, look, I'm with you. I was always against the whole idea of it, but actually, the more I think about it over the years, the more I think it would have been helpful if, when it was introduced by the last Labour government, under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, it was scrapped by the Conservatives when they came to power in 2010. Had that been rolled out by now, it wouldn't have been a panacea, but it would have been a very useful tool in establishing who people are and what their identity is. Because at the moment, we really don't know who's in the UK. That's been the case for a long, long time. We don't have a database of population that we can rely on. And we don't have really that mechanism in place, which virtually every other country in the world has.
I mean, the counter-argument, of course, is that people can just make counterfeit copies.
Well, they can on anything. I mean, one of the big problems on border control is not just the people who you see in the dinghies, is people who present forged or stolen documents that have been tampered, when they get to immigration control. So that's always going to be an issue. But I think, the fact that what Macron was saying to Keir Starmer when he came over to discuss this issue last year was that basically we need to do more ourselves in the UK to try and reduce some of the pull factors, particularly, in relation to the grey economy. And we know that there's lots of that going on in the UK.
And the answer to that, is it to fine those companies, the grey economy companies, when they are employing people who they shouldn't be, or they can't reference, or they have no right to be in the United Kingdom?
Yes, and there's a mechanism in place for them for Border Force and immigration enforcement to do that. But of course, it depends on the amount of resource we put into those functions, and whether they can actually find the people and and then find the employers. I mean, that happens now. It also happens that they can actually find people, for example, who run haulage businesses who have stowaways in their lorries.
But I feel very sorry for the lorry drivers who just stop, for example, for a cup of coffee or whatever, and then the lorry is hijacked by illegal migrants.
Yes, that's true. Yes, it's difficult really to get a balance here, but the fines do work if they're used. There was a recent report by one of my successors as the Chief Inspector of Borders. It was published earlier this year. It basically said that the fine system for hauliers just wasn't being used by the government, and it recommended that it was used more effectively.
So in your experience, and finally, if I may just ask you this, do you see a point where we will actually get to grips with this once and for all?
Well, it depends. The problem with holding the government to account on this is the government has consistently won't say what it expects its efforts to achieve and by when. So if you remember when the Conservative governments used to say, we're going to reduce migration from the hundreds of thousands to the tens of thousands, right? And so since that point, when they conspicuously failed to achieve the tens of thousands figure, politicians have shied away from giving any figure whatsoever. And so, if we're spending 600 million or £1 billion working with the French in terms of law enforcement efforts, when do the government think does it think it's going to reduce illegal migration by half by Christmas? Are they aiming to eliminate it altogether, say by the middle of next year? We need some metrics, and that's what this French politician, Bertrand, is it?
Yes.
Bertrand. That's partly what he was saying. He was saying we should suspend the Le Touquet treaty if the British government don't actually get their act together and prevent this illegal trade. And I have to say, that's a very seductive argument, and it's one that the British government should be quite concerned about if it's being now touted in France as an answer to this issue.
John, really good to talk to you. Thank you for your time. That's John Vine there, CBE, former independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. Lots of messages coming in on this, as you would expect. Tony from Ruislip. David, you're far more intelligent than me. I'm not sure about that. Can you please explain why illegal migrants are paying thousands of pounds rather than taking a £22 flight from Paris to Heathrow? Well, simply because they won't get through the border. This way, of course, they can chuck their passport in the sea and just come in willy-nilly, aided and abetted by the French police. Tony, thank you for that. Nikki in Bristol says, hi, David. Oh, yes, the Great British TikTok Tour. Swipe right for free housing, free money, free clothes, free days out, and a complimentary side of self-loathing from the native wets, who hate Britain more than the people actually arriving. They're not flocking here for the English language or culture. They also aren't here for the all-you-can-take buffet advertised in 15-second clips. Nothing says proud island nation like paying people to not learn the language whilst the hosts apologise for existing. It's a little convoluted, but thank you very much indeed for that as well. And David, just very quickly, don't mention ID cards and immigration. The whole of the EU uses ID, but it's still overrun with illegal immigrants. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
We have to stand up to the French. We have to be much tougher. We have to stop. I mean, the pull factor is huge, but even without the pull factor, there are going to be people who, want to come across that bit of ocean and come to us. And I just think, once again, we do a lot of talking about it, and Andy Burnham, every time he's interviewed, says, oh, yes, but there's fewer boats coming. There may be fewer boats coming, but they're actually bigger boats and they're holding just as many people. I think the money we're giving to France is unbelievably big for what they're doing for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Yeah, a French politician is saying, right, the answer to illegal immigration is the British people need to pay more money to France on top of the 1.1 billion. By the way, only 161 million of that is contingent upon results. Now, he also says maybe we need to suspend the Le Touquet deal, which was signed in 2003. And then also the British government need to get their act together and actually stop having a pull factor into the United Kingdom. And actually, when I first read that story this morning, I thought, crikey, not more money, but he's got a point. What are these pull factors? Why are people coming here? Is it because we speak English? Is it, as we just heard from John, because we don't have ID cards and therefore we can't actually check who these people are? Or is it because we've allowed this grey economy to grow and prosper and develop, like the delivery drivers, for example, which I know only too well from my own experience, are people who turn up on your doorstep who are not the people in the photograph that they're wearing around their own neck? Now, clearly, something needs to change. And as I keep saying, this is going to be the #1 issue at the next election unless this is sorted out. Barry is on the line from Norwich. Good afternoon, Barry.
Good afternoon, Coz. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much indeed. I'm so frustrated by this illegal migration issue. It just seems to me that we hose money at the French, nothing is done. We have this taxi service. I mean, you've got Border Force. We say that they're turning into this sort of border taxi service. No one is doing anything. There is no political will. Parties like Reform UK have talked very tough on this and saying, right, we're going to actually stick, you know, pretty much we're going to stick a Type 45 destroyer in the channel, and that will deter people. But something radical has to happen, does it not?
I think I'm more than frustrated with it. I'm actually angry about it. Do you know what I mean? Right, what we need to do, it's not very often I take the side of the French, but I will do on this occasion.
Go on.
Yeah, right, because we are the pull factor. Yeah, the French...
Oh, you're breaking up slightly.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, a bit better.
Yeah, so what we need to do, the French, we need to do...
OK, no, we can't hear you, Barry. We'll call you back. We'll call you back, Barry. Let's just read some messages whilst we get him back on the line. Of course, David, this is Paul in Southend. Of course the French are to blame. When have they ever solved a problem? They've been a thorn in our sides since the year dot. My dad, who fought in the war, said having France as enemy is the only way to be sure which side they are actually on. That's a bit rough, isn't it? I did enjoy the question, though. Whilst we wait for Barry in Norwich, let's talk to Georgina in London. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David. I mean, if this wasn't so serious, it would be a joke. As far as France stopping the boats is concerned, forget about it. We're throwing good money after bad.
It seems so.
You know, well, it is, David. You know, if after all this time and £1.1 billion later, we've seen no viable results, and this government now thinking that giving them more money is going to solve the problem, then they are absolutely...
Well, to be fair, it's not this government, it's the French who want more money.
Yes, but this government and the governments before have been paying France to do a job that they haven't done. I mean, David, we'd be better off keeping our money and spending it.
I agree.
Spending on our borders and spending on our defences. You know, France has had ample time to remedy this situation, but instead of doing the job we are paying them to do, they are actually helping the migrants, giving them life jackets and enabling them to cross the channel. We would be as well stopping all funds because they are making the problem worse.
So if a British government not only talked tough, but actually acted tough and stuck a warship in the channel, turned the boats back at the 12-mile line and said, right, France, this is your problem, it's not our problem, I actually think that's a vote winner.
Well, I think it's a vote winner, but if you think that this government or the prior governments were going to do anything, you're dreaming. They haven't got the political will to do it, David. They've got no intention of stopping the boat whatsoever. We've had this problem time and time again, and they go back and they say, oh, we're doing something about it, we're going to solve the problem. Empty promises every time to get votes. Let me tell you, they have no interest in the boats coming over. This is a national emergency and should be treated as such.
I mean, I can sense the anger in your voice because obviously you are furious about what is going on. Some people, the Europhiles, are saying, well, the answer to this is to rejoin the EU because that way, of course, we can deport people back to their country of origin.
David, the Europhiles are a bunch of idiots. If brains were dynamite, David, they wouldn't have enough to blow the hat off, and that is a fact.
Georgina, really good to talk to you this afternoon. Georgina in London. Jeff's on the line from Warwickshire. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, young man.
Oh, thank you. Young man. I haven't been called that for a long time.
Well, I'm 82, so you're younger than me.
OK, I'll take it then. Thank you.
Now, listen, this immigration law, I think we're attacking it the wrong way.
OK.
I think we should attack the EU because they're the ones behind it.
Right.
How are these dinghies coming from China, some via UK, then they end up in Hamburg? How are they getting from Hamburg down to Calais?
Well, so the EU will say, well, they're trying to hunt these dinghies down. They have had some success. They've stopped some of the smaller ones, but then bigger and bigger boats are now coming. We saw 250, 260 people packed onto these. I mean, they're not even dinghies, are they? They're massive, great boats.
That's a load of rubbish. So what I would do is kick the EU out of our fishing waters or stop importing French and German cars. We have to take money from the pocket and not put it in.
And do you think there is a political party with the will to do that?
Not at the moment, there ain't, young man. Not at the moment. Unless we get Nigel in, we won't do any good at all.
And you really believe reform will do it? You don't think it's just hot air?
I think they'll do it. Nigel's been a little bit anti-EU when he was in the UKIP, when he was in the Parliament.
Yep.
I was backing him.
Yeah.
He's the only one who stands up to the EU. All the other wallies don't.
I like your choice of wording. Really nice to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, Jeff. And this is Don in Chelmsford. Good afternoon to you. David, yes, we do have a pull factor, but it's because our politicians have let us down. I would think most people don't welcome illegal migrants and are not concerned about the dangers of crossing the channel. I would agree with you, actually. Thank you for that. Elaine says, we're told one of the main reasons these illegal migrants come here is because they want to go to a country that speaks English. Yet, every single time, without fail, when one of them turns up in a court case, guess what? The taxpayer is then paying for a translator at every single stage. It's a really good point, Elaine, actually. And when you talk to people, they then profess they don't speak any English at all. The other thing also I just wonder is also how many of them have got family in this country, and that may also end up being a pull factor into this country. David, this is Darren in Barnsley. Hi, David. Great show. Thank you very much. I can't see why the United Kingdom and France can't get together and get France to let us send everybody back as soon as they arrive. If they did that for a few months, it would help both countries as they'd stop going to France in the first place. But I think actually the views are so entrenched now from the French side and also from the UK side, that's never going to happen. I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary, the numbers and the money that we are spending, this £1.1 billion. I can't get my head around how much money we are actually spending. Now, this is John. Asylum seekers coming here are seen by the left as desperate refugees fleeing persecution. The people helping those desperate refugees to flee here from persecutions are seen by the left as cruel, vile criminals. Let's do one more. This is Stephen, sunny Devon. Good. Lucky you. Oh, it's sunny here now. Stephen, sunny Devon. Dear David, it's certainly not the French. I would do the same as them. The culprit here is our lazy government, past governments and present governments. Steve, thank you very much indeed. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. After the break, we're going to move on. I'm going to be talking about Andy Burnham. It's one month tomorrow since he's been Prime Minister.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you, just after 2 o'clock on Wednesday, August the 19th. I'm David Bull, in for Ian Collins. The second week we spend together. Thank you for your company. Let's have a look at the news making the headlines this hour. Well, a French politician in charge of the Calais region has demanded British taxpayers cough up even more cash, branding the UK a permanent attraction for migrants. Now, as Andy Burnham marks 1 month in Downing Street tomorrow, scrutiny is growing over his flagship Number 10 North projects. Critics are questioning whether shifting growth powers to Manchester amounts to real reform or just a costly gimmick. And Labour's net zero obsession is costing families over £500 a year. That's according to the Tories. A new analysis is putting the total cost of the policy at £320 billion by 2050. And those are the headlines this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Let's talk more about Andy Burnham. So, a month of him being Prime Minister tomorrow. The question I have for you this afternoon is, what has he actually done? Well, the big gimmick, as far as I can see, is the shift of power to Number 10 North, which is in a very nasty office block in Manchester for no apparent reason. Now, Andy Burnham refutes that. He says that actually Number 10 North will take over responsibility for economic growth from the Treasury. He says this is a huge transfer of power out of Whitehall. He went on to say that I'm actually worried. This is what he says, I'm paraphrasing. He raised concerns. He said the Treasury has a dual role currently, which is to promote economic growth and at the same time to control public finances. And he said sometimes the department then tries to balance the books and that clouds the growth mission. And therefore, because of the separation, moving part of that to Number 10 North will actually become more and more apparent in terms of significance as we go forward. He says it is a huge transfer of power. It's something the country has never cracked before. Well, that's not true, is it? Because we saw this in 1964 under the Wilson government, where Wilson developed something called the Department of Economic Affairs. This was to foster long-term economic growth and also, I quote, to bypass traditional conservative policy making of the Treasury. Now, that didn't last very long. It closed in 1962. I may venture the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Oscar Redrop, former Number 10 advisor, joins me now. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, David. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you very much, and thanks for joining me. What do you make of this? Number 10 North, but this separation of powers, he says, is absolutely crucial. So you've got essentially the Treasury has a dual role, promoting economic growth and then also controlling the public finances. The separation, geographical separation, is paramount to ensure we have economic success in this country.
I think it sounds really lovely. It really does. But unfortunately, the realities, and it sounds really lovely, I think, with Andy at the moment, where it's summer. You know, I'm a West Ham fan, so to use a footballing analogy, I have watched pre-season, before the season starts, West Ham look brilliant. And then as soon as the season starts, they clearly haven't prepped enough. And it's loss, terrible, doom and gloom. And it feels like he's living in this like summertime wonderland where he isn't actually having to confront the really, really huge issues we have as a country. And right now that idea sounds nice. But when Number 11's up here and Number 10's down there, and crisis is absolutely hitting the proverbial is hitting the fan. It's just not going to work. It's going to make things longer, harder, more confusing, more convoluted. And the relationship, the bind between 10 and 11 is so essential to a working government. And look, I was no fan of them, and I take a lot of your watchers and listeners with me either, of Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. But they were on the same page. Right? Like, you'd have to give them that. You know, they stood by each other. You know, you knew they were joined up. The thinking, you might have hated the thinking, but the thinking was joined up and consistent. And I think this is just going to add an extra layer of complexity for the sake of something looking lovely and, you know, warm and, you know, fluffy in the summer. And people are going to be let down because the issues that our economy is grappling with, if anything, they need to be working in the same bloody office, not, you know, on other sides of the country.
Yeah, I think that geographical separation is very difficult. For anyone running a business, you know that you're more prosperous, you get more done, you have more sort of sole purpose when you're all together.
Absolutely. And look, rather than where it is, I would much rather these summer months, because he's been given such an opportunity that most leaders do not get. He's been, like I said, he's been given a pre-season. Yeah. You know, but when does that normally, that's so rare that happens for a prime minister. They're thrown straight into the fire. And I would much rather that time was spent on actually putting together a really serious grown-up plan on growth, on how we are going to get, how this government are going to get growth into the economy, rather than where we have hold those meetings or where we kind of, I would almost call it virtue signal, right? You know, and I might not sound like it. I grew up in Liverpool, so I'm not, you know, the North, we need a strong North. We need all the regions in this country in a really, really strong place. But this just is not it. But it sounds nice, right? And he's indicating, and he feels comfortable with it.
I mean, I think the thing is, to me, it's a massive distraction. The whole thing, the whole North-South divide is a massive distraction. Government is centred in London. It always has been. It will be again. And I think what he's doing is actually, what it does is divide the country, because you start asking questions. I live in East Anglia. I start asking questions about, well, what about us in East Anglia?
And deprivation and communities that have been let down for generations are not just in the North. And, you know, and we hear about Manchester this, Manchester this. Manchester is relatively thriving. You know, what about Bolton? What about Stoke? Yeah. What about Burnley? You know, these towns and cities that have been forgotten. My worry is, one, do we have a bit of a homesick Prime Minister? that just has this longing for Manchester and feels really comfortable there, as he would do after all those years since he's been Manchester Mayor since 2017. But that worries me. That worries me. We need seriousness. We need resilience. And the other thing, because you know it's been his month, his first month as Prime Minister, that I'm yet to see is does he have the coldness to make some really, really horrible, tough decisions? And I haven't seen that yet. And decisions like this worry me, because it just feels, I just want to be on my comfort blanket, and I feel homesick.
So I think one of the accusations levelled at him is the transition from being a mayor to being Prime Minister is so massive that actually he hasn't adapted. And I think he thought the transition would be longer in some way, or at least he wouldn't be in position. When you look at the policies he's announced, they're nothing policies, aren't they? When you look at a 20% cut in business rates, I don't believe it. This is for pubs, clubs and live music venues, capping the bus fares. And now, and I'll come on to this one, but he's going to end homelessness by Christmas. These, I mean, lovely, but it's not the priority of the country.
No, it isn't. And so, in all fairness, if then when we hit September, October, November time, when the pre-season is over and the season starts, if he has these really impressive, serious ideas, then that he's been working on the summer whilst doing this kind of window dressy stuff, then I will hold my hands up. And, you know, we all want this country to do well, ultimately. And I will say, you know what, fair play. This is a really, really good level of leadership we've now got in this country. I haven't heard any of the sort as yet. So it's very hard to judge.
It is very hard to judge. So Andy Burnham, this is the story today in The Guardian, has urged local leaders to offer all rough sleepers. And, of course, this, again, as you mentioned, is his comfort blanket, because he's done it in Manchester, to offer all rough sleepers in England a route off the streets by Christmas. So he's pledged another £100 million to end homelessness, as I say, very nice. This is on top of the money he's already put there. So there's £442 million. Now, actually, I think this could end up being an Achilles heel, because he's he's essentially set his goals and parameters, and he will have to achieve that by Christmas. He didn't manage it in Manchester. He's not going to do it across the United Kingdom either.
No, he didn't manage it in Manchester, and that's something that's often forgotten in the story. But look, you know, who in their right mind wouldn't want to see an end to homelessness? Okay, so that is a complete swinging open door amongst politicians, the public, whoever. But how it's done, how it's funded, crucially, if we're, you know, it's another huge pledge of money, and we still don't know who's going to pay for that ultimately. I'm sure we all have a fair idea of who's going to end up picking up the bill for not just this, but even these little kind of cosmetic handouts he's been giving, you know, on the cost of living. You know, ultimately, this is all going to come back to the taxpayer, on an already overburdened taxpayer and state. But you're right. It's a really emotive pledge, and with things like this, there are certain policies that, you know, and people might not want to hear this, and it certainly isn't how politics should be done. You can chuck out a big number, and yeah, we're going to solve this by X date, and because it's relatively low on the, you know, priority list, it often gets forgotten, right?
Yep.
This is huge. This is rightly, it's a really huge issue. You know, homelessness is such an emotive, high stakes issue, obviously. And so if he doesn't hit this, then on his own, even by his own, on his own turf, on his own ground, if he hasn't hit an achievement like this, then it really, on the serious stuff that he doesn't seem comfortable on, like illegal immigration, you know, you're going to be thinking, well, if he can't do the stuff he's comfortable with, you know, what good is he on the stuff he isn't?
Well, that's right. And also,
I was going to
say also, you know, the fact is he's floating ideas. I can't help thinking about, he said he's minded to approve Jackdaw and Rosebank. This is floating policy via the public to see. It's not a game show. Either you have a belief and a structure and a strategy, or you don't. You don't sort of ask the audience, what should we do?
Yeah, absolutely. He seems to me, and I mean this in a really, in a good way, he seems to me be a really nice bloke. The problem is, if you're a really nice bloke and you end up being Prime Minister, it becomes very, very hard to say no to people. And that is 99% of the job. This is the direction we're going in. And there's going to be losers and there's going to be winners, but we need, what do we need? We need growth in the economy. We need to solve illegal immigration. We need to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm steering this ship. And unfortunately, if you're not getting on it, you know, that's tough. And these are tough times. He does not strike me as that type of guy. So we're going to get a lot of, oh, well, I'm going to have a look at this. And, oh, you know, I'm really going to take that on board. And, you know, maybe we can all just get together and, you know, people, you know, politicians who I don't necessarily agree with, maybe we can come together and find a, you know, and it sounds lovely. It doesn't work. Politics, unfortunately, is brutal. It's rough. And you know, I'm just trying to speak. You, of course, you yourself will know.
I do know.
It can be brutal. It can be tough. It's tiring, and it strikes me a nice guy might not be cut out for it.
I mean,
that's my worry.
I think you're right. I think you have to be absolutely ruthless to be Prime Minister. I mean, Boris Johnson, you advised Boris Johnson in Number 10. I mean, Boris also made that pledge to end rough sleeping. He couldn't manage that either.
No. And look, I mean, Boris was, and people might be throwing stuff at their radios or TVs when I say this, but Boris on the big stuff was able to make really, really big decisions. And, you know, people again might hate this. I think 99 times out of 100, he got those really, really big calls right. But still, you know, Boris is clearly someone who wanted to be liked, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think that's when he found things trickier in politics.
I mean,
and you know what? He'd probably even say that himself.
I mean, I think Boris fundamentally is probably quite a nice chap.
Yeah. And a lot of people, again, might be throwing stuff at the radio. But that's how I found him to be anyway. But I think there's a slight difference with Andy Burnham and Boris in terms of the likeability fact, is I do believe that that Boris ultimately knew what he wanted. And with Andy Burnham, and what he wanted by and large was on the side of the country, I felt. You know, in terms of, you know, that levelling up agenda and Brexit and all that kind of stuff. I feel like Andy's going to have those left-wing Labour MPs really pulling on him in the direction away from the British public. And I'm not sure Andy Burnham's going to have the strength to turn around to those Labour backbench MPs and fight them off. Because even, you know, Rachel Reeves on welfare and Keir Starmer on welfare, they couldn't do that. And that was a huge, huge beginning of the end moment, I think, for them in many ways, amongst the British public. And I think Andy is not going to be able to stand up to those backbench MPs any better. And that's a real worry as well.
I think when you see him interviewed, I'm just watching him on another screen, the fact is he just looks terrified the whole time and coming out with platitudes and sound bites. if you were to advise Andy Burnham now, what would you say to him? Because clearly, as you mentioned, the factions within Labour are going to pull him and push him everywhere. And the hard left are going to try and draw him left. Now, that's not how you win and sustain a country or indeed win elections. At the same time, you have a resurgent right, although it's very fractured. So Burnham is going to have to appease people, bring his team together, but also take the country with him. And I'm just reading messages here. Sean Cooper says, Burnham is the furthest from a proper Prime Minister I've ever seen in my 58 years. The man is an absolute embarrassment, and he is a muppet. Sean in Bridlington. Now, also, having gone round the country, I don't think even the Northern Heartlands are really, truly behind Burnham.
Well, look, I mean, the nice guy down the pub northerner thing, right? It's complicated because in the pros and cons of it, that him and his team, because it is quite confected, by the way. You know, Andy Burnham back in the day in Westminster was not the Andy Burnham that we now see. You know, he was in his lovely shiny suits. He was a good little Westminster spad, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it is confected, the image he has now, and that is fine, right? But one, it doesn't look serious, and I think the British people don't like it can almost feel condescending. Hey, I'm just relatable, right? That's all you guys need. You just need a relatable, you know, guy to have a drink with down the pub. No, actually, you know, that's quite condescending, mate. We actually want people who are serious and serve the country properly and solve the serious issues of the day and understand us, not just kind of pat us on the shoulder and say, what bar snack do you want? So, so if I was advising him, I think that's a real danger, that the pats on the back that he is giving with his communication and probably receiving in the short term will come back to haunt him. Because ultimately, what do we desperately want? We want our defence. We want to be able to defend ourselves as a country. We want a growing economy. I think ultimately we want to be able to keep more of our own money. We want border control. You know, these are the really serious issues. And if he just kind of ruffles our hair and goes, oh, but I'm a nice guy, I think things could turn really quickly for him.
I would agree with that. Can I just ask you about this as well? There's a story in the Daily Mail today. Andy Burnham accepted £345,000 of donations in the last 12 months. Now, this came from donors, including Lord Sainsbury. He gave £164,000 of support. Lord Blunkett gave £2,000. Then you've also got Gary Lubner. He gave money. Charlie Parsons, who runs a television company, he gave 50 grand. Think Labour, which used to be known as Labour Together, the think tank, gave more than £22,000 for staffing and IT equipment. Ernst & Young gave a secondment to his team worth £16,500. I mean, I can't help thinking this smacks of Keir Starmer and glasses.
Look, I mean, this is the thing, right? If you do the holier-than-thou thing, if you do the I'm just a working class guy, done good, now I'm PM, you know, this kind of doesn't work alongside that. And whatever you think of him, a genuine, I would say, kind of, and again, it depends on your politics, but like a working class, you know, someone who believes in the working class struggle and a genuine working class politician, like, and I am not a fan of Jeremy Corbyn, he would not have taken these donations, right? So sometimes you do think with these guys, Starmer was a little bit less of the, you know, played up to it as much as Andy Burnham does. But it's that condescending thing. It's like, look, I'll cosplay as the working class guy, but I will take £100,000 worth of freebies and donations. And the little old bloke down the pub who I've done that lovely social media video for, he won't care. He probably won't notice. That doesn't feel right to me. You know, especially when they were whacking the Tories over the head for it for, you know, years and years and years. It doesn't feel right. I do think, though, and this might be a bit, I don't know, contentious maybe, but I think money in British politics isn't always a bad thing. And we do often like to, you know, say that it is. But look, if he hasn't, look, the Working Class Act will really, really wear thin. And particularly if there's more of these donations to come, because that's not a small figure. And I know Reform have got their problems. The Tories had their problems with this stuff. But that is not a small figure for Burnham at all.
No, it is not. Oscar, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for your time. That's Oscar Redrop, who's former number 10 advisor to Boris Johnson. Your thoughts on all of that, please? Many messages coming in about that. This is rather good. Sean says, Burnham becoming Prime Minister is like the doorman at the BP headquarters becoming the chief executive. That's Sean in Bridlington. I think that's very, very spot on and very pertinent. Hi, David. The gimmick of Downing Street North reminds me of Brussels packing their toys and going to Strasbourg. What a brilliant analogy. Once a month, I used to have to do that, a huge cost to the taxpayer. The whole thing is performative. Just for those people who don't know what we're talking about, excuse me, every month, excuse me, I had to pack my entire office into boxes. The whole lot went from Brussels up to Strasbourg, and all the diplomatic cars went, all the staff went, the whole thing went, the whole travelling circus went. What a waste of money. Do get in touch. This is Talk.
Zia Yusuf is one very, very popular amongst the base, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons he is popular is because he speaks from the hip. He speaks in a language and with an attitude that is shared in pubs up and down the country, but not necessarily in Westminster seminars.
Do you think he gets away with being a loose cannon, whereas Tim Montgomery doesn't? Tim Montgomery gets suspended, Zia Yusuf gets hugged closer.
There's a big difference. Tim is an ordinary party member. He is not a spokesperson. He is not an elected member. He's not on the board. He literally has no role in the party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Lots of messages. How can Andy Burnham find homes for illegal boaters in 90 days, and yet we have no homes for the homeless natives? The hypocrisy is off the scale. Quite right. David, Andy Burnham isn't my PM. He got elected in Makerfield, roughly 0.16% of the country, which is adorable. Like claiming the local kebab shop owner is now running the entire takeaway industry. Moving number 10 up north isn't rebalancing the country. It's just adding an extra postcode to the stationery budget and a longer Uber tab every time someone actually needs to get work done. Now, there are other organisations I could mention. For example, the BBC moving everything to Salford, and all that happens is that people then have to commute between London and Salford, or indeed London and Manchester, at huge public cost, and the whole thing is utterly ridiculous, in my humble opinion. Let's take a call. Matt's on the line from Cheshire. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, David. Can I firstly say that BBC Salford is just an extension of like a Labour Party headquarters?
Well, I literally don't understand it. And on the odd occasion I've been asked to contribute to various programmes, they will, so if I'm doing the papers, say, for a particular breakfast show, they will then make me go up the night before, pay for the train, pay for a hotel, and I'm on air for 6 minutes.
Yeah, you might as well just do it over Teams or Zoom or whatever.
Or do it in London.
It's just somewhere for Andy Burnham's team to go for the lunch, Salford. That's all it is. It's like where Gary Neville and Andy Burnham used to hang around, and Lisa Nandy. It's nothing to do with...
So that's really interesting. So is this a comfort blanket, which is what Oscar was saying, for Andy Burnham? Because he obviously feels far more at home in Manchester than he does in London. So this is, in many ways, just concocting something he can go to because he's happy.
I remember when Keir Starmer said he was going to finish at 5 o'clock on a Friday.
I remember. I'm like, oh, I think you're Prime Minister.
This is just I'm going to finish on Thursday afternoon, isn't it? And then go home on a Friday. So while Andy Burnham was mayor, I wrote this down, David, so I can give it you sort of fairly eloquently. He and his brain-dead Labour councillors led to a fall in living standards in many parts of Greater Manchester. And the only city region where he and his corporate and socialist pals benefited was the city centre. Simultaneously, he was turning it into like an immigrant-infested, crime-infested hellhole. So the idea, he now knows he has failed all these parts of Greater Manchester when he was complicit and avoided doing anything worthwhile in those areas, especially in areas like mine. It just shows that he just basically clutching at straws, flailing all over the place. Everything's a novelty. And finally, he's not a coherent and good communicator.
He's better than Starmer, isn't he?
Slightly. But he's obviously spent the last month learning his blanket statements, parrot fashion. Yet when he's questioned on issues off script and that he doesn't want to talk about, he's a rambling, bumbling clown, just like every other sort of Labour politician. He basically is just saying the same statements as Starmer was saying.
And you see, so this careful narrative of he's the king of the north and Manchester's doing fantastically well is also not entirely true, as you know. So parts of Manchester are thriving and developing. He didn't end rough sleeping. He's now gone back into that comfort zone of saying, now I'm going to end rough sleeping nationally. He's kind of just reverting to the recipe he's followed before.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's watched YouTube or an auditor on YouTube knows that Manchester isn't a success and it's filthy and it's falling apart. Yeah, they built a few corporate towers with Gary Neville and places for them to all go and have lunch and look out of the window and look down the nose at everybody. But everywhere else, like Piccadilly Gardens and Market Street, is much worse than it was 30 years ago.
And that was the point. When I was going around the country and I stayed in Manchester, there were islands of new development, let's say new hotels, nice hotels, and then true poverty and deprivation outside the window.
Of course, that's Labour in a nutshell, isn't it? Manchester had more character. And in the 90s, when the Hacienda was open and all the music and the nightlife was there and the gay village was sort of really popular, it was a dump, but it had character and everybody in the Northwest sort of met up there and people came from all over the country. Now, it's just an extension of Labour's ideas and all the idiot students that go there to live are all brain-dead, Labour-following nutcases. So basically, it's just an absolute disgrace what he's done, and anybody who believes otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about.
Matt, really good to talk to you. That's Matt in Cheshire. Thank you for your call. Matthew's on the line from Warrington. Good afternoon.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. I know it's been a long day.
I know.
So, Wernham's going up to Manchester, bringing up this Westminster from the north.
Yes.
That is just a front. He's trying to low down on everything else that's going wrong. You know, now he's going on about the economy and the Treasury. He wants to take a bit of power from the Treasury. He's now undermining the Chancellor of the Exchequer because he's just going to be a puppet. He's going to spend money wildly without the Treasury being able to pull the strings in. He's going to make the homeless, give them all homes. Well, if it could have been done, it would have been done years ago, wouldn't it?
Well, that's the point. It was done. It was done in 1964 under Harold Wilson, and it didn't work. They closed it in 1969.
Exactly. And it's like saying the homeless, giving them all somewhere to stay by Christmas. If homeless people, a lot of homeless people could get out of being homeless. Sometimes it's a way of life.
Well, that's right. And some homeless people don't want to be housed.
No, exactly. But then what he'll say is, well, we can home our homeless, but then we can also home our migrants. So it's a cover, it's a smoke shield for what he's going down, because he said himself he's got no intention of stopping the migrants coming in. He's got no intention of stopping net zero. He said last week, and it didn't really get picked up by anyone, we just need to carry on with our cleaner way of getting energy.
Can I just put this to you regarding Andy Burnham? This is a message just come in. Universities have different campuses and businesses. Businesses have different branches. So why can a Prime Minister not have 2 offices?
Well, because London is our capital. It's our financial capital of the United Kingdom. Our government is based there because that's where it's all at. Why? And when he goes, whoever takes over from him is just going to go straight back down to London. So it's a load of expense for no reason.
Yeah.
People are going to a lot of civil. If I lived down in Kent or Surrey or something, and I travelled into London every day, why would I want to move to Manchester?
Well, they're paying them a fortune to relocate.
Exactly, and well, that's it for 1 or 2 days. If you're not going to do it.
But you see, I saw this when the BBC went to Salford. I saw it because my friends were all paid to go to Salford, even though they didn't necessarily want to go. The reason they went is because the money was really good.
Yeah, but that's not always going to last, is it? And let's be honest, whoever's the next Prime Minister, whether it's Farage or Kimmy or another Labour leader, they're not going to continue going up to North. So who the next Labour leader is a Southerner. He's not going to think, I'll go up to Manchester. It's just he wants a long weekend, doesn't he?
He does.
So we can go and watch a bit of rugby at Lee on a Friday night, and then he can go and watch Everton on a Saturday. Because don't forget, when Starmer first got into power, he said he doesn't work Fridays. It's his family time, and his phone gets turned off on a 6 o'clock. Because that doesn't last. You're a big boy. You've got the main job. You're the Prime Minister of our country, and they don't want that responsibility. They're scared. Oh, I want to be a Prime Minister. And when it comes to push comes to shove, the rubbish at it. Starmer was crap, and this guy's not going to be any much better. Let's get a proper person in, whoever it is. Let's get someone in who can run this country and grab the bull by the horns and say, right, we're in a mess. We need to sort it out. We've cut the welfare. We need to sort our defence out. We need to sort our National Health Service out. We need to sort our roadways out. And it all starts. Everything is wrong, Doctor. You know it. You've worked in the NHS. You've seen it when you've travelled the country. Top to bottom, it's a mess. And no one is actually, oh, OK, I'll give you 63p off your gas bill. No, get rid of net zero. Let's get some oil. Let's get some fracking. And let's get some money. And let's get some taxes. And let's take the burden off the working people. Because whenever in our lifetime have we ever paid more in benefits than we have in tax? You can't sustain that.
Of course you can't. 333 billion quid. Matthew, I think you should be Prime Minister. Very, very strong opinions. Thank you for your call this afternoon. Right, after the break, I'm going to be talking about the Green Party, because the Green Party want to have an inquiry into the culture and behaviour of the media. One may say what they want is censorship. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, back to politics. Zach Polanski has demanded an inquiry into the culture and behaviour of the press. He says it's time the media was, in his words, sorted out. What does that mean? Well, he signed a letter to Andy Burnham demanding the government launch an inquiry into how to ensure a responsible press following the death of Jason Arde. Now, he described the Independent Press Standards Organisation, that's IPSO, it's the regulator, as toothless. He's called for the forced, wait for this, the forced sell-off of most national newspapers. How? Because he would ban foreign ownership. Now, his intervention comes as Green Party members called for the government to reopen the Leveson inquiry, if you remember that, to ensure full completion of the Leveson inquiry, which, if you remember, completed, I think, in 2012. So they want full completion of that. They want to place the media under a genuinely independent and recognised regular with effective enforcement powers. So Green members put forward the motion they would see a new regulator map and address examples of racism, ableism and monitor harassment allegedly arising from news stories. Now, that motion was put forward 2 days after Jason Arde's tragic death and before the Greens conference in October. It could become party policy, by the way, if it's voted on at the Green Party conference. There's a lot of concern about what they are actually proposing, which is censorship of the press. Tom Slater, who is the editor of Spiked Online, joins me now. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, David.
I mean, this is straight out of the Green Party playbook, isn't it? The fact is, what they're saying here is that they want to have tighter regulation. They want an inquiry into the culture and behaviour of the press. They want no foreign ownership. They essentially want to muzzle the press. That is very dangerous for a free democratic society.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Like many Green Party announcements, this is as sinister as it is authoritarian. What they're talking about here is ushering in the shackling of the press by the state for the first time in hundreds of years in this country, and doing so for nakedly political reasons, because it didn't appreciate the tenor of the Jason Arde coverage, because Zach Polanski, like many kind of progressive political leaders, have an axe to grind against the right of centre press because it happens to publish unflattering stories about them or to criticise them in quite trenchant terms. And that's what all of this is about. Show me someone who's calling for press regulation and I'll show you someone who's trying to shut up their opponents. That is true here, and that is true of every time that you see interest in this issue flare back up again in public.
I mean, it's straight out of some sort of dictatorial playbook, isn't it? You know, Polanski wrote, I don't think it would be rushing to judgment to see that the press hounding people, wait for this bit, especially people of colour, has been going on for a very long time. I'd argue that actually what the press did there was, as the Jason Arde story unravelled and it became blatantly apparent that pretty much none of it was true because there was evidence to the contrary, the press kept digging, which is what the press is there to do.
No, exactly. The press did their job because Cambridge University failed to do theirs, because there wasn't proper scrutiny of Arde's record in academia, as well as the more fantastical claims he'd made about his life. And of course, the tragic way in which this story has ended, of course, raises all kinds of questions, but it doesn't raise questions about the press, who are there to hold powerful people to account, influential people to account. And I think to indulge in this smear that what the press was doing over recent weeks was racist harassment, that in effect the media killed Jason Arde, I think is utterly outrageous. And I think it's that lie which this new campaign for press regulation is being built. But that
is exactly what he said. There is no doubt, or there cannot be any doubt, that Dr. Arde's tragic death was the direct, foreseeable and foreseen result of press harassment. A significant element in that harassment was the colour of his skin. That is simply not true. And as you say, I think it's absolutely, totally unacceptable.
No, I completely agree. I mean, this is also this narrative, which is that this is the kind of right-wing reactionary billionaire-owned press who were going after this poor unsuspected black academic. It doesn't take into account the substance of the allegations, as we've talked about, but also the Guardian newspaper, the Atlantic over in America, the New York Times. These are liberal left outlets. Many of those stories were written by black journalists themselves. So this narrative is just being set up to try to push through a pre-existing political agenda. It's trying to use a tragedy and to exploit it to push through a regulation of the press that the Green Party already supported and were quite happy to use this as a situation to push for it. And as you say, it's just so authoritarian. One of the quotes doing the rounds from Zach Polansky, it's time we sorted out the press. The government must step up and stop being cowardly. That's the sort of thing you would expect out the mouth of Vladimir Putin, not someone leading a supposedly progressive liberal party.
Very true, and also using this, what is a shocking tragedy, without a doubt, but using this to push their sort of goals and ideology of the Green Party. You know, he says he not only says it's time we sorted out the press, he says it's time we corrected the constant misinformation to protect the donors and fossil fuels in destroying the lives and people on this planet. I mean, that's blatant electioneering. It's using a terrible tragedy to push your own political narrative.
No, and I think we have to call that out for what a shameful position it actually is. No one could help but be moved and shocked by the news that we heard last Friday about Jason Arday's tragic passing. But it seems like there's many people who saw that and thought, brilliant, we can use this as a way to push through with our pre-existing agenda. And even these claims about what we need to do is end the ownership of newspapers by foreign billionaires and what have you. I suppose there's a separate discussion that could go on about that. But isn't it telling that all of the newspapers that would affect are newspapers who happen to be right of centre, who happen to be critical of the Green Party, and frankly, who would be making those arguments regardless of which billionaire happened to own them, because that's their politics. This is all about politics, and it's all about censorship.
It is, and he says we need to push independent media like Byline Times, Novara Media and Turn Left. Heaven help us if that's the extent of our media in this country.
And also, as someone who runs an independent online magazine, the thing about press regulation is it would be a real problem for those of us who are trying to set up dissenting, independent outlets when they tried to push through measures to force outlets to sign up to some sort of state-backed regulation not too long ago. The way they did it was to say that if you were ever sued, you would be forced to pay even the cost of the person who sued you, even if you won the case. That's the sort of thing that an organisation like mine could not withstand even one case of. So, again, the unintended consequences of this would mean actually a lack of media pluralism, not more of it, in my view.
And how much of this do you think is actually due to the fact that Zach Polansky is losing favour, that the poll ratings are not good for the Green Party? You know, there was that kind of honeymoon moment, wasn't there, where the Green Party was doing extremely well. That has passed. The Green Party's sinking down. You're seeing the more right-of-centre parties doing well, although the fragmentation of the vote. But the Green Party, without a doubt, you know, every party has adopted, well, sort of, the direction of net zero, even if you say, well, we need to get there in time and have nuclear and we need to have coal and gas and fracking. But essentially, they've almost destroyed themselves, so there is no raison d'etre for the Green Party, unless you believe it to be an uberly left-wing party, which is probably true.
No, exactly. I mean, what is the Green Party standing for other than we should immiserate ourselves economically even faster than the current net zero timetable? Keir Starmer was a gift to them. It opened up space to his left. He was so unpopular, particularly with left-wing voters. Now Andy Burnham, and you're seeing a lot of those people who flirted with the Greens moving back into the red Labour column. So I think this is, aside from everything else, I'm sure he does believe this, but it's also, there's an element of kind of attention-seeking which seems to be going on at the moment with these pot shots at not just the press, but Burnham as well.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time, Tom. That's Tom Slater there, editor of Spiked Online. Back to Andy Burnham. Hi, David. This is Mark in Staffordshire. Burnham will have almost served the length of Liz Truss's term by his first PMQs. I tell you what, David, he'll be 42 days in. She did 49. Let's see. Les in Cheshire says, David, when Andy Burnham was Mayor of Manchester, he was never seen out and about in Manchester, save for canvassing to be re-elected. He was never seen in a pub with a working man. He's a fake politician. He's a fake Prime Minister. He is embarrassing. What else have we got here? Andy Bussam, very good, is not up for the job as Prime Minister. It's clear to see already buses, buses, buses. Then he looks like a deer in headlights when talking about serious issues like early releases. And finally, Pat says, Dr. David, Andy Burnham is not our Prime Minister. He wasn't elected or voted for by the people of my England. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. Also, we're talking about channel crossings. The French want more cash from the British to stop the channel crossings. Well, £1.1 billion doesn't seem to have gone very far to stop the illegal migrants coming over the channel into our country. Let me know your thoughts. Are the French to blame? Very simple.
Zia Yusuf is one very, very popular amongst the base, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons he is popular is because he speaks from the hip. He speaks in a language and with an attitude that is shared in pubs up and down the country, but not necessarily in Westminster seminars.
Do you think he gets away with being a loose cannon, whereas Tim Montgomery doesn't? Tim Montgomery gets suspended, Zia Yusuf gets hugged closer.
There's a big difference. Tim is an ordinary party member. He is not a spokesperson. He is not an elected member. He's not on the board. He literally has no role in the party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is a Talk. So, channel crossings, the illegal migrants up. The French want more cash. Simple question for you this afternoon. Are the French to blame? Just generally. 03444 499 1000. Calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word Talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. Lois is on the line from sunny Essex. Good afternoon to you, Lois.
Good afternoon, David. Lovely to hear you back on Talk.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you.
Oh, Sack. Or should we say Dave? I can't decide what to call him.
Oh, right. Go on.
What a dangerous man he is.
Go on.
Really
Why?
dangerous. He's got the ideologies of somebody who is a communist 101. And I am going to call him a communist. He can sue me. I haven't got any money, so there you go. The guy's a communist. He doesn't want us to talk. He doesn't want freedom of speech. You can't curtail the press. You've got to have the press to have free speech and free press. Also, the population needs to have free speech. And it seems that anyone on the left doesn't like us people who are a little bit on the right.
So that for me is a brilliant answer, because it seems to me, and you saw that in Epping, you saw it in various other places, where if you, as a member of the public, dare to be dissenting from the mainstream left-wing media position, you're almost a heretic. You know, the whole point is people should be able to go down the pub and say, I don't like the level of immigration in this country, for example. That's not racist.
No, it's not racist. In fact, I actually work as a cab driver. I take various people in my cab. They vote for whoever they want to, you know. It's freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and I do believe in that. And I've always said to anyone who's in my cab, we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression in this country. Say what you like. You're not going to offend me. I don't care. You know? I've taken people that have moved to this country legally, and they are most disgusted with what's happening. In fact, they're very worried for us.
So they came here illegally or legally?
Legally. They've all come the legal route. So they've paid for their citizenship, they work, they pay taxes, you know, they're not in council housing, they're private renting, and they are both disgusted with what's happening.
Well, I think it's the depth of unfairness, isn't it? You know, even friends and people who've worked here, who I've worked with, you know, who are European nationals, they've gone through all the right processes, they've spent all the money, they've done it all by the book, they've got a great job, they're contributing to the economy, and they just see everything they've done being undercut by people coming here illegally.
That, and also they've mentioned to me about freedom of speech as well, because even people, ordinary people, you know, people who don't speak out, because there are people like me and obviously you guys and anybody who phones in who speak out, but there are a lot of people who are very, very scared not to speak out, and they're scared of having the police knocking on their door, being ostracised from their community, you know. All sorts of different things are making people scared to speak out, and Zach Polinsky is I can't think of words to use that I'm not going to swear, but he is the reason why people are afraid to speak out, because of people like him. You know, people like him, Muffin Ali. We'll even go to the Labour Party, shall we? You know, they don't like us speaking out either.
No, they don't. They don't. Lois, really nice to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Lois in Essex. Kevin's on the line from Basingstoke. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I don't know what she was on about. People are speaking out about asylum seekers all the time. That's all we ever hear. It's the most talked about topic.
It is. I mean, yeah, I would say to you that on this station, if we do a subject, you know, if we do an item on illegal immigration, the phones are red hot.
Well, I know that's your job. That's what you've been doing for years, isn't it? I mean, you don't talk about anything else, really. I mean, that's your main thing, isn't it?
Not really, no. We talk about the economy, we talk about government, we talk about politicians. By the way, nice to hear you back on the line again.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're brave enough to talk to me.
Of course I am.
Well, not brave enough, but nice enough.
Well, that's very kind. That's very kind. Look, I like a robust discussion, and our discussion the other day was certainly robust.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous the way you keep going on about asylum seekers. I mean, they make up like 0.01%. It's absolutely tiny. And if not one single asylum seeker came to the UK and all the ones that are here now were deported, it wouldn't make any difference. We'd still have a shortage of houses. We'd still the NHS. People on benefits.
But what about the money?
The cost of living.
But hang on a minute. What about all the money we're throwing away? Like, even I just said, £1 billion to the French to start with. Then the money that we're paying for private accommodation, we spent last year £4 billion, so that's another. So we're now at £5 billion. I'll tell you what you could do with £5 billion. You could pay for another hospital, for example. You could actually invest in social care. You could do a lot for this country.
David, our economy is £3 trillion, and you're saying that £4 billion.
So you don't think £5 billion is a problem?
$2 billion of that comes out of the foreign aid budget.
What's that got to do with anything? The fact is we should be using it for foreign aid, not for people who've come here illegally.
Well, maybe we should be. We'd still be spending it. But anyway, why don't we just... if we cut 5 tax loopholes, it would save...
Oh, for goodness sake. Look, the point is the principle of this, is it not? You cannot wander into a country illegally. Now, if you're a true asylum seeker, that's different. But if you are an economic migrant, you can't just wander in and expect us to look after you.
Well, you can. You can just wander in, and they do. But most asylum...
Is that fair?
Most asylum seekers don't come on small boats, only 30%.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So the small boats need to be stopped, don't they? By even your admission, therefore the small boats need to be stopped.
70% come here legally. So even if
70% of what?
They're still going to come. Pardon?
70% of what come legally?
Asylum seekers. They come here as students or work visas.
Yeah, OK, so we're on the same page here. But we've got all these people coming over who should not be here, who are actually economic migrants.
Well, no, they're not economic migrants because most of them get permission to come anyway. And you said whose fault is it? So you're blaming the French. So should the French blame the Spanish?
No, well, no. So there's a difference here. I'm blaming the French. I'm also blaming the British government, who need to be much tougher.
Well, no, they shouldn't be much tougher. I mean, they're being as tough as they can. I mean, Nigel Farage hasn't got any plans. What's his plan? He hasn't got a plan.
Well, you have to ask him.
What he does is whips the whole thing up and makes people angry, but he hasn't got a plan.
Do you agree that immigration, both legal and illegal, is the #1 issue now and will be at the next election?
Well, it might be the #1 talked about issue, but we need immigration. We need more
immigration. We do need immigration, but you want legal immigration and you want high-skilled...
That's why they let them in.
But you need high... So let's go to legal immigration. So Boris Johnson, 3.8 million people, unskilled people, came into this country. That's underwritten or basically lowered the prospects for people, British nationals, who cannot get jobs because we've let in a bunch of unskilled people who should never have been let in the first place.
Well, I heard you say to that woman that these people drive down wages, didn't you? Didn't you say that? These immigrants come over, you know, foreign people come here to work, so they drive down wages.
Well, they should not be working. So, for example, in the culture, like, for example, delivery cultures, that should not happen.
Well, don't you think people should join a union then, so this sort of thing doesn't happen?
No, I don't. I think unions are...
No, you don't like unions, do you?
Well, I resigned from the British Medical Association because I didn't like the direction of travel. I have to move on, Kevin. It's always such a joy. Kevin, great to talk to you this afternoon. Have we got time for Cliff? Cliff's on the line from Slovakia. Good afternoon.
Hello, David.
Hello.
Lively conversation.
Well, it always is. It always is.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so earlier you talked about ID cards.
I did.
Your personal feelings on them. I live out in Slovakia. First thing I had to do was get an ID card. Jump through several hoops.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to work for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Of that ID card. I have no, and I've been here 10 years now. I have no recourse to public funds.
How interesting. Which is what certain parties are purporting, isn't it? To say that actually, even if you come here legally, you haven't paid into the system, so therefore you shouldn't be able to take out of the system. That seems fair.
Absolutely. So I have a medical card, but the thing with the ID card is used for everything. It's used for your banking.
Yeah.
You get stopped by the police, which I frequently am, for speeding. My fault, not theirs. But that is the first thing they look at, and from that they can check you're legally in the country, you've got a right to remain, and all your biometrics are on there as well. It's a nonsense to me. The second part I wanted to mention, if I may, is that the French have got no reason to stop these folk coming across.
Yeah.
Nor have the Belgians, and nor will the Dutch when they move further and further up the coast, because there's no incentive. You can throw as much money as you want. There is no incentive for them to have them in their country.
None. Do you think, therefore, and I was talking earlier, actually, about my own view on ID cards has shifted. I've always been vehemently opposed to them. I'm now coming round to the idea that we already carry so much ID that, you know, actually, if it stopped illegal immigration into this country, you know, and made the country better, and we could actually provide for our own people, then maybe I should think about it more.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other thing it gives you a level of security that we don't have at the moment, because a lot of the time there's things that are going on. People are slipping through the net. They're working and all the rest of it that they apparently shouldn't be doing. And there's no way, in actual fact, if I'm a cop and I stop someone on a Monday, my colleague stops them on a Friday, there's no way of telling whether they've been stopped or encountered with the police or you know, some sort of security element to it. They're invisible people once they get in, and that is the big problem.
It really is the big problem. Cliff in Slovakia, thank you very much indeed. That's a brilliant call, actually. So that's exactly what happens in Slovakia. Maybe we need to model ourselves on those European countries like Slovakia. Right, we're going to go to a break. After the break, I'm going to talk about net zero. Yes, net zero is going to cost you, each family, £540 a year. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the final hour of the Afternoon Empire with me, David Bull, standing in for Ian Collins this week and all last week. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Let's look at the headlines of this hour. Well, a French politician in charge of the Calais region has demanded that British taxpayers cough up even more cash, branding the UK a permanent attraction for migrants. Andy Burnham marks 1 month in Downing Street tomorrow. Scrutiny is growing over his flagship Number 10 North project. Critics are questioning whether shifting growth powers to Manchester amounts to real reform, or is it just a costly gimmick? And finally, Labour's net zero obsession is costing families over £500 a year. That's according to the Conservative Party. A new analysis puts the total cost of the policy at £320 billion by 2050. And those are the news headlines of this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock, the sun breaking through here in London. Well, let's talk about net zero, shall we? Because Labour's net zero obsession is costing cash-strapped families more than £500 every single year. This is according to the Conservative Party. Now, a major analysis, and this is fascinating what they've done here, found the price of pursuing the policy would cost the country £320 billion by 2050. Now, this, as you remember, is at the time when Andy Burnham is now looking at what he does in terms of energy strategy. He's looking at Jackdaw and Rosebank, and do they get authorisation to go ahead? He says, well, I need to give voters breathing space because I need to actually cut VAT on electricity bills. But the bottom line here is UK electricity prices rank amongst the highest in the developed world. Now, this is the interesting bit, because Onward has finally finished the research that was stopped by, guess who? Ed Miliband. Now, Onward looked at this. It's a think tank, and they focused on a very different question. They said, right, OK, let's work out how we reduce the cost of electricity in this country. And it examined something called a cheap power system. So the cheap power system would use a bit more gas, a lot more nuclear power, and far fewer renewables than the current strategy. OK, so what they realised was that actually they could cut the bills in this country rather significantly, and that would then inform political thinking. So what did it show? It showed that actually, if they did that, it would mean that bills would be £540 a year cheaper for households by 2050, and yet it would still result in nearly 80% of clean energy. Electricity would be 20% cheaper by 2035. It would be 33% cheaper by 2050. That seems like a rather good plan to me. But joining me now is Maurice Cousins, who's campaign director of Net Zero Watch. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
I mean, there's so much mission creep here, isn't there? Just this obsession with net zero. I mean, the Tories are saying, what, it's 300 billion. I think Reform UK believes it's something like 800 billion. In fact, the cost of net zero is so large that no one actually knows how much it is.
Yes, I mean, that's what happens when you're trying to transform the entire material basis of your economy. And switching over to unproven technologies that don't really work very well. And it's just to be clear here, what we're talking about is this is just referring to the power system. So this isn't about other costs associated with reaching net zero. So that 320 billion figure is just relating to electricity. Things like costs of things like electric vehicles, other aspects of net zero are not included in that figure.
Yeah. So when you look at what they're saying here, this cheap power system, they're also saying, well, actually, it would also save money because you're not trying to, as you said right at the beginning of the interview, you're not trying to wholesale basically rebuild the energy grid. So we know that the cost of pylons and cabling and all that stuff and connecting it to wind and solar farms, which, by the way, when it's not windy and it's not sunny, don't work, is exorbitant.
Yes, I mean, I think a lot of people make the mistake that when you are told that renewable energy is sort of cheap, what often is ignored when we talk about this are the vast amount of infrastructure that's required to make the energy that's produced from wind and solar useful and to get it to where actually the consumption is needed. A lot of this wind is often produced in parts of the country that are remote, so actually being able to get it where it's required needs huge amounts of cables, pylons, etc. That's just very, very expensive and resource intensive. I mean, I think you the last election, I think you stood in Suffolk, and this is a very live issue down there.
Oh, isn't it just? I mean, we've got swathes of fields with solar panels. Also, there's real concern about the cabling involved, the substations involved, ruining what is a beautiful part of the country. And of course, there are massive pylons being thrust upon people who don't want them.
Well, it's basic physics, really. I mean, to be able to produce the amount of power that's required to fuel your economy, wind and solar is low density, so you need to have huge amounts of land and infrastructure in order to be able to get the same amount that you'd be able to get from, say, a nuclear power station or a gas turbine. And then the other point, as I've said, is that it's remote. So it's not just that you need to have huge amounts of infrastructure to be able to harness the energy. You've then also got to be able to have huge amounts of infrastructure to be able to get it where it's required.
Yeah, exactly right. And in terms of nuclear power, and I've said for a long time that actually we've taken so long to actually decide to build these nuclear power stations. The ones we're building now, like Sizewell C, is old technology. And we need to move to SMRs, for example. So let's be smart about what we're doing. And also to try and upgrade the entire grid in a matter of a few years to get to net zero by 2030 or some insane target that they've now thrown upon us is just impracticable.
Very much so. I mean, the central problem is that we've got one objective at the moment, which is dominating not just energy, but pretty much every aspect of policy making in this country, which is decarbonisation, at the expense of other priorities, including affordability and security.
Yeah.
And that's just it's not pragmatic. It's ideological, and it doesn't serve the national interest.
I rather enjoyed this sentence. The authors of the report concluded the government's approach to the electricity sector was incoherent. The interesting thing for me, and I didn't know this about the cheap power, it was commissioned by Claire Coutinho, and then the man who stopped it because he didn't like the findings was Ed Miliband.
Yes, inconvenient truth he wanted to bury.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hallmark of an ideologue, really. You don't want to have facts that can, encroach on reality.
But you see, here's the bit that doesn't make any sense to me. They are simultaneously pushing people to adopt electrification, like cars, for example, without having the infrastructure to support it. And it's flagellation of the public. They're being made to have this. They're not even being given a choice anymore, that they have to move towards this. A very good example of this, heat pumps. Again, if you, as you mentioned, Suffolk, if you go to Suffolk, and many of us live in old buildings, you cannot heat an old building with a heat pump.
Yes, it's insane. I mean, look, I work for an organisation that campaigns against net zero, and I think there's often, this debate has become warped over a number of years because we're often sort of told that, oh, you're opposed to heat pumps, you're opposed to electric vehicles, and stuff. We're not. We're agnostic about all of these things. To be honest, it's like if people want to be able to choose these technologies, that's up to them. But you're not going to have people adopting these technologies if you make the electricity really expensive.
100%.
I don't really care whether or not people drive an internal combustion engine or an electric vehicle, or if they want to be able to heat their home using a heat pump. I don't really care about that. And in some cases, those technologies can be better. But what those things run on is electricity. And if you make those things really expensive, then it makes no sense, and you won't get the uptake, and you won't have a competitive market, because all you're really doing is you're just forcing technologies onto people, and the fuel source that's being required to be able to do that is just very, very expensive.
Now, it's interesting because let's take solar panels, for example. The feed-in tariff here in the UK is much better than, say, in Spain, because it's much sunnier in Spain and they've had it a lot longer. But the market forces mean that people adopt solar in Spain because essentially they get zero electricity bills because they can generate their own electricity. That's the way that you drive consumer behaviour.
Yes, you do. I mean, I think we have to be careful, though. I mean, the reality is that I think we're ranked number 298 out of 300 countries in the world solar power.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Ireland is the only country that comes below us. So there are limits to this. But you know, we do have to remember that if more and more people are going behind the meter, if you like, and they're not actually contributing to the wider system, those other costs will be imposed on other people who don't benefit from solar. So we do have to be careful there.
It's quite interesting. I didn't realise this, but Dale Vince, who obviously has been a huge proponent of net zero, is now, well, he seems to have changed his tune. He's now saying we do need to pragmatically start drilling. That's a huge 180.
Yes, I'm not quite sure what he's playing at there. I mean, he's quite a wily political character, Mr. Vince. So I'm not quite sure, but it is quite the turnaround from the man who openly admitted to having funded Just Stop Oil to now basically joining sides with people like myself who've long been arguing that we should be maximising. Well, to be clear, he's only saying that we should authorise Rosebank and Jackdaw. But yes, it is quite the turnaround.
But even so, that's a massive intellectual leap, and I think maybe that's because pragmatically he's realised you cannot get to net zero by 2030. The original target, remember, was 2050, and even that was pretty adventurous. And then to bring it forward to 2030 is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to need oil and gas in this country for decades to come, well beyond 2050. So the real question is where do you get some of that from? And to me, it just makes complete sense for us to be maximising that domestic production as much as we possibly can. I mean, I wouldn't stop short of North Sea. I support onshore operations as well, including fracking.
I think many people do who watch and listen to this channel as well. So Andy Burnham has to make this decision on Rosebank and Jackdaw. What do you think he will do? I mean, he sort of says, I mentioned this earlier, he says he's minded to approve one or maybe two of them. But again, that's just like kite flying, working out where the public sentiment is. You have to decide what is best for this country, and I'm not sure he's thinking like that.
Yeah, I mean, we still use oil and gas in this country. There are all sorts of problems that are going on in the world. The more we produce here, the better. And the fact that he has to sort of think about this through a PR lens is absurd. I think he probably will approve both of them. But you see, David, this really is a bit of a fake row, because at the end of the day, these licences were sort of greenlit by the Conservatives under the last government. The real dividing line here is actually whether or not this government will lift the energy profits levy, which is deterring investment in the North Sea, and if they'll scrap their new legislation to ban new oil and gas licenses. So this is being presented as a sort of a display of pragmatism. It isn't. It's the bare minimum they should be doing. And as we've said before, they should also be looking at fracking. They won't, because they're cowards.
Yeah, I mean, and also that plays very nicely into this, which is the article in the Telegraph today saying, well, taxpayers are going to face billions of pounds to subsidise the UK's gas industry because of this net zero crusade. As you mentioned, energy firms pulling out. It's not profitable. So now what they're saying, oh, we need to have state-funded gas companies. I mean, none of this makes any sense.
No, it's upping all the norms and realities of a free energy system, and we're just creating an absolute dog's dinner. And you can see it in your energy bills, and yeah, it's why we're in real trouble.
And even they admit, the government admits, the cost of bringing a strategic gas storage reserve, or an FSRU, will be in billions of pounds across a 25-year timeline. Richard Tice, Reform UK's deputy leader, said the plan showed the government has lost the plot. First, they subsidise renewables, then they realise the wind doesn't blow, the sun doesn't shine, we have a huge blackout risk, and now they're going to subsidise gas to billions of people to act as a backup. And, of course, all that means, ultimately, is taxpayers are fleeced yet again.
Yeah, I mean, those have to be paid somehow. They'll either go on your bills or through higher taxes. So, choose where your pain lands.
Well, you'll be very pleased to know, finally, that the Home Office, instead of tackling the illegal migration crisis, is spending £4.5 million on electric car chargers for their staff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see why they're doing this. The Home Office has one purpose, and that is to protect us as a country. I'm not really sure what benefit this has to either tackling climate change or for that matter, dealing with small boats and illegal migration.
Well, they say they need to have electric vehicles for immigration enforcement, border force and border security command. They won't be able to charge them, will they? Because we can't afford to charge them.
It's just absurd. I mean, like, you know, yeah, talk about priorities. Focus on the things that actually matter.
Yeah, actually do your job. Morris, thank you ever so much. That wasn't to you, it was to the government. Morris, thank you very much indeed for your interview there. Morris Cousins, Campaign Director of Net Zero Watch. Philippa says, good afternoon to you. Why do we need to be net zero when we outsource all of our emissions-making industry to China, India and Indonesia? Correct? Afternoon, David and the team. Your friend Anne from Nottinghamshire here. Hello, Anne. ID cards would only be used by law-abiding taxpayers. Those who are supposed to round up won't actually bother. And by the way, David, net zero is a big fat waste of oxygen talking about it because we do our bit and the rest of the world say, nah, can't be bothered. Oh, this is good. This is Chrissy. This is very international, this programme. Chrissy in Spain. Hola, Chrissy. Buenas tardes. David, listening to Cliff from Slovakia, it's the same here in Spain. I had to take up residencia, and to receive that, I then had to show I could support myself and pay for private medical care. I am not entitled to benefits, to free mobile or anything else you care to name, unlike the illegal immigrants in the UK. Love the show. Chrissy, thank you very much indeed. I'm very excited. I'm going to Spain soon. But thank you very much. So we've heard from Spain and Slovakia. They are very, very clear that you do not get help from the government, even if you take up full residence there. And that is the policy that's being purported by one of the major political parties. And just finally, if I can, regarding the Prime Minister's 2 offices, David, I've lived in the hills for several years. I can vouch for having an office near to the Prime Minister's home so that in severe inclement weather conditions, he can still go to work, have meetings and run the country. I'm spurious. FaceTime and Zoom do not provide a personal touch or give clerical, maintenance and cleaning staff jobs. OK, fair enough. And I'll do one more. Tim in Suffolk says, right, David, I've done the maths. London to Manchester is £200 return. 2 hours each way, around 300 staff, big travel costs or mega relocation cost indeed. Oh, I've got one more to do. This one says, David, the number 10 North, the building was created when he was the mayor of Manchester. He wants to show appreciation and value for these people who helped him, his political roots, and not ignore the North. The King of the North label cruelly began a few years ago as mockery, and now it's used as pride. This is Talk.
Some member of the public that said, if you were Andy Burnham, what would be the first thing that you would sort out in in the UK. And I was thinking of what would be the popular consensus, not the political consensus, because I don't think the public are as concerned about rough sleeping as they are about potholes. Why doesn't he sort out the potholes and send a message to people, we're actually going to improve the quality of life in the United Kingdom? And
But
so
potholes don't matter as much as people. I mean, you can't be saying that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Right, Dan's on the line from Lancashire. Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon, Dave.
Right, what's on your mind this afternoon?
Not very happy about that French politician saying we should pay more money.
Well, funny that.
Yeah, and it's really our fault. Now, I consider the geography of France. It's a big place, and all the migrants are arriving in the south border with Spain, southeastern border with Italy, and over from Germany. So if your migrants are arriving on the southern border, why do you build a reception centre 800 kilometres away, right at the entrance to the Channel Tunnel? That's like saying, UK is right over there. Off you go. Get on the train.
Yeah, well, they don't want them, do they?
Well, there is that, but that's the whole point. This whole thing started with Sangat 1 and Sangat 2, which were well before the small boat crisis.
Yeah.
So they've been dumping them here, making it easy for them since, well, before I can remember.
But you see, but you know, who does that deal where you go, OK, I'll tell you what, we'll give you 400 million, fine, then we give you another 600 million, of which only 165 million is contingent on you doing anything? I mean, which Wally signed that?
Well, that is a good question. To be honest, we should be sort of looking at Rwanda again and saying, look, we've got half a... Yeah, we'll open a centre at Rwanda. And the minute these people step off the boat, we separate the women and children because they are probably our refugees.
Let me just ask you about that, because I was really interested. I mean, obviously, we saw Rwanda go back and forth through the courts, and then the Tories finally got it through, and then it was scrapped immediately by Starmer, I think, in an act of gesture politics. But I wanted to see whether Rwanda worked, and we knew it was already working because we saw illegal migrants actually moving from Northern Ireland into the Republic of Ireland. And I'm told that we could reactivate that quite quickly. Do you think there would be public support to retry Rwanda?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a legal route to deport them from the country. And let's face it, anybody that enters the country without a passport is breaking the law.
Correct.
And that's it. Makes you a criminal. So I don't understand, and I can't get an answer from any politician as to why we are not arresting these people the minute they arrive and saying, you've entered illegally, and makes you a criminal, we take your DNA, we ship you to Rwanda, and you're not coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rwanda scheme was that you went to Rwanda where you're processed. If you are not an asylum seeker, you're out. But you're right. Look, there are safe and legal routes. Coming here and claiming asylum is not legal.
Safe. Don't claim that France is not a safe country. Claim that places like Bulgaria, Greece, they're not safe. You're not fleeing a war zone.
Well, I mean, the last time I was in France, I felt quite safe. Have you even
got a great line, I'm afraid, Dave. But
what's that? Sorry.
It's not a great line. I heard you say, the last time you're in France. But yeah, I appreciate it. It is safe in France.
It's safe. Dan, really good to talk to you. Guy's on the line from Hampshire. Good afternoon, Guy.
Good afternoon, David. How the devil are you?
Yes, I'm jolly well, thank you. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Good.
No, I was just ringing in about the immigration thing because I heard it was a while ago, but we've heard the classic trope of put the Navy in a channel, turn the boat back.
Yeah.
Won't work. And
Won't work.
I'm a naval officer, and if I was ordered to do that, I would potentially refuse to do it.
Why?
As it's an illegal order.
Why is it illegal?
Because I'm going to kill someone, and I'm going to kill them either accidentally or accidentally on purpose. Now, what I mean by that is if I kill them accidentally, it's when I sort of come towards the small boat, whatever, someone gets up, jumps over the side or throws a small child in something, I can't rescue them. And it's a potential manslaughter charge because my actions, and all the rest of it.
Even though you're ordered to do that?
Hang on, I'll come back.
Oh, sorry.
And if I was to put my ship alongside a small boat, I'm potentially, it's great in a flat calm, but it's never a flat calm in the channel.
No.
Put them alongside, potentially crush someone.
Yeah.
So that's how that accidentally, as I said, the first one, or accidentally on purpose. Now, the only way I'd do it is if I was given a gold-plated, gilt-edged, get-out-of-jail-free card, because I can guarantee that when the human rights lawyers come for me, I'm not going to have the Secretary of State for Defence in the dock next to me saying he was obeying orders. I'm afraid the Nuremberg defence went out with the Nuremberg, so it ain't going to work. And AKA Northern Ireland.
Good point.
Soldiers who are being done now. I don't see many of the old Secretary of States for Defence saying, I ordered them to do that, but because they get out. I mean, you're a Reform supporter and member of Reform or whatever. Let's say you're the Secretary of State for Defence. Your argument would be, we've given an order. How they do it operationally, that's down to them. And it's the same that's what's happening with the police. It always devolves to the lowest common denominator as to who gets done. It's not the people higher up the chain. So there's that. The other thing is the sheer practicality of it. Putting a Type 45 alongside a small boat, not going to happen. That's the equivalent of sending a Challenger tank to enforce parking restrictions.
Very good.
It's a waste of an asset of what it's not meant to be doing. You need a lot of small boats and small cutters and things like that. So the border,
which we don't have,
in the Navy.
No.
You could put ribs at sea, with about 5 or 6 Marines in there. What are they going to do when they come across a dinghy of 260 people?
No, yeah.
They're not going to board it and try and turn it. It's an impossible task. It's a bit like the armchair generals will say, we'll put the army on the beaches.
So can I just ask you then, because Reform then said they launched Operation Fortress. They said the Royal Navy will intercept all migrant boats entering the English Channel, securing those on board and transferring them to safe British vessels and returning them to France or Britain. So you're saying that's just not possible?
It's just not possible. We tried this with Operation Isotope a couple of years ago under the Tories. It didn't work then, partly because Border Force refused to play. Now, I'm not saying the Navy doesn't have a role. They do. But it's not this. What this needs to be done would be some kind of private contractor or reinforcing Border Force to do it.
Right.
But it's not... the Navy aren't constabulary.
So, OK, so from what I'm hearing, what about this? So when I'm Secretary of State and then I come to you for operational clarity, we then say, right, OK, Border Force cutters, we're going to invest in those. We've got £1 billion that we've given France that I can buy some cutters with. So we put the cutters there. What about having naval presence behind the cutters to act as a deterrent, but they're not going to engage?
To what purpose? Are we...
Well, just to show of strength.
Fire on them?
Sorry?
No,
not to open fire, but as a show of strength. If I saw a Type 45 sitting in the channel...
There's no point in a show of strength if you can't use that strength.
OK.
We're not going to open fire. This is the point I was trying to make with putting the army on the beaches. So what happens if the boat lands, people walk up the beach, walk through the lines of soldiers? What are they expected to do? Shoot them? It ain't going to happen. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that something dire did happen. Can you imagine yourself and well, not so yourself, but the media the hullabaloo behind it, the outrage that would go on. I mean, I think back to the Bryce Norton incident where the who was it? Pathline Action invaded and destroyed a couple or attacked a couple of aircraft.
Yeah.
I bet they were in someone's sights, but they didn't open fire because it wasn't danger to life. Now, if they had opened fire, can you imagine what would have happened? I mean, I just think back to the Manchester police incident where the guy got taken out, and what happened until the full story came out.
Doesn't that reflect poorly on our laws? Because if you break into a military base, you face the consequences.
Well, yes, but the military aren't above the law. So why did you murder this person? Why did you shoot them? Was there danger to life? The answer is no. And it's the same with putting the Navy in the Channel. There's a potential danger to life. Now, this is where the reforms thing gets very, very Operation Fortress. I mean, that was, they put on the front cover a picture of HMS Ocean, which we sold to the Brazilians about 8 years ago. But
oops.
Oops. But sorry, I've forgotten what I was going to say there.
No, so you're talking about Operation Fortress and the imagery and put the wrong ship on the front cover.
Yeah, we've got the wrong ships to do this. We haven't got cutters. We haven't got that many ships to do it.
What about if we pass legislation underwriting the Royal Navy to say that actually you're exempt from any legislation? I don't know whether you can do that.
That's what I said. If you did that, then happy days, gold-plated, gilt-edged, until the next government comes along, repeals that, and then I'm up in front of the human rights lawyers again.
Yeah. I mean, reform says there's going to be a joint military command with the Royal Navy, Royal Marines, RAF and British Army, so not possible. An integrated surveillance command, not possible?
No, that's the bit where I think the military can bring it. They can bring the expertise with logistics, building up that surface picture, directing cutters, whether they're border force or some private contractor, to do the intercepts, if that's what's going to happen. But but this is the whole point. The military, the army. You could argue it's the army went in to back up the police in Northern Ireland, but they weren't the constabulary. They were backing up the police with the necessary force. They weren't out there arresting people. The border force are the people with those powers. And it's not the military who have got those arresting or constabulary-like powers. It's not their job. And as for a show of force, unless you use that force, it's pointless. Yeah, you can have a ship on the horizon, happy days. What are you going to do? Just drive past it.
Guy, what a brilliant conversation. Thank you, Guy. I think we need more instruction by yourself about what we can actually do in terms of the military supporting the operation. Guy in Hampshire, thank you very much. Right, after the break, we're going to have a royal roundup. Crikey, it's like being back doing weekend breakfast. I'm going to be joined by Linda Derberly, who is a journalist, to talk about the King's cancer. We're going to talk about Earl Spencer's new book, and also this rather brilliant story I found this morning, which is the King has brought back Balmoral men-at-arms. What are they? You'll find out after this break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, David. How do we stop ID cards being used to control us on, as they do in, say, China? The state can stop bank accounts, cancel ID cards, stop travel. No to ID cards. No name on that one. No, I'm changing my opinion slightly on that. David, this is also one-sided. This is Sue Van Sanden. What exactly are the French doing? Well, good question. What are they doing to protect their borders? They should be paying us for every migrant they're allowed to cross from France. Good, like that. Right, let's move on. Let's do a royal roundup. Lots of royal stories around in the papers this morning. Joining me now is Linda Derberly, who is a journalist. Good afternoon, Linda.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you very much indeed. This is interesting. Let's start with the King and the Queen. And, of course, the Queen Camilla opened Maggie's Royal Free Cancer Support Centre in London. The timing of this was very interesting because, of course, at that time, she knew about the King's diagnosis, but she couldn't let on, even though she was desperate to let on. And she let this all out, didn't she, in a video?
Well, in fact, the timing is the story.
Yeah.
Because she had to go to the actual event knowing that she'd only just received the news about Prince Charles, and she knew how
King
imperative
Charles.
it was. Sorry, yeah, King Charles. Do you know, I still keep saying that. It's
Well,
funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, I want to call her the Queen Consort. That's another story.
That's another story,
Yeah.
exactly. But I think she went along to this event at Maggie's Centre, and she obviously had to keep quiet because of her position. It was imperative she didn't let any news leak out. And that must have been quite a hard thing to do. But also, you have to remember that cancer now strikes, I think, 1 in 2 of us.
It
I
does.
think 50% of us will get cancer. So maybe we can't afford to see it in the same light as we used to see it. I know that's an easy thing to say, but we have to start regarding it as a really awful, serious disease, but that it is manageable. In certain types of cancer
Well, that's
now,
the point. That is the
probably
point.
chronic disease.
Well, I thought what was interesting about what she said in this video was that she, obviously, she's been a big supporter of Maggie's for a long time, but for the very first time, of course, she was now one of the people that she'd been there supporting. So she was there as a family member of someone with cancer, which many of us are.
Yeah, and I think that Camilla actually is a very empathetic person.
I do.
She's got osteoporosis, as I understand it, and that hits many people. I mean, many of the women in my own family have suffered from osteoporosis. So we pay very close attention to people who are good spokespeople for that particular condition. And she's also a very good spokesman for that condition. And she's very committed, actually, to many of the causes that are confronted by women today. So I say, well done her.
Yeah, I didn't realise that Maggie's was named after Maggie Keswick-Jenks, who had breast cancer, and she very sadly died. But she decided that once she was diagnosed, she wanted to make these sort of nice home-like places, environments within hospital surroundings where people could actually sort of decompress and have advice and guidance and support and counselling and all the rest of it. And now, of course, they have this string of Maggie's centres. That stuff is, you can't really put a price on that, and to have a royal patron means a lot.
Oh, it's absolutely massive. I think they're about to open a new one as well. And they, as you say, they have opened several. And it's massively important for people facing, say, for example, stage 4 breast cancer, which is nearly always terminal. Even later stage cancer means you have to go through an horrendous battle in order to survive and to be in the right environment with the right support. And that could be conversations with staff, it could be advice, it could be just being in a comfortable, peaceful environment is absolutely imperative. I you know, I don't want to be too personal, but I found a lump a few years ago. My doctor was absolutely admirable. I was inside for a test within 10 days.
Wow.
I had the test. I had the biopsy within half an hour of going into the examination room, and the results of that biopsy, thankfully, it was not cancer, but within 2 weeks. So we've moved on a lot with breast cancer, but there's still more we can do.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And, of course, the thing is, I was reading a number of articles this morning, and I thought, unless I read it wrong, but one of the papers was saying the King had prostate cancer, but I don't think we actually know what type of cancer he's got.
No, we don't know. We don't know. We speculated on that form of cancer
Yeah.
at the very beginning when he announced he had cancer, but he has never confirmed what type of cancer he has had. And I don't even know if we understand whether treatment is ongoing at the moment. It may well be.
I imagine maintenance therapy is. I mean, certainly he was hit quite hard with drugs, I think, for whatever cancer it was. And then I think he went into remission. But again, you know, and actually the detail is slightly irrelevant, isn't it? And the point that you made is a good one, which is that when you know that the king and the queen and the royal family are affected, and we saw that with Catherine as well, that actually it makes it very human.
Yeah, and I think that's very important to understand it. I had someone who became a friend, Deborah James, who had
yes,
bowel
Bowel
cancer,
Babe.
the Bowel Babe, and she did a great deal about this with her podcast,
She
You, Me and the
did.
Big C.
Yeah.
And I think that did a huge amount to demystify this terrifying disease as it was characterised. I mean, it is horrible. The treatment is often horrible and saps at your energy, but it can be treated, and survival rates are much better
Yeah,
than
they
they
are
were
improving,
a decade
definitely.
ago.
But the golden sort of thought is you need to get in early. So the earlier the
Absolutely.
diagnosis, the better. Right, let's talk about Earl Spencer. He's got a book out.
Yeah, I've just ordered it, actually.
Have you?
It's not out until September 22nd, I believe.
Right.
But I love reading royal books, and I was at one stage a royal correspondent, and, you know, I can't read enough of them. So I've got it on pre-order. It'll be delivered quite soon, as soon as it comes out. It's very, very interesting. He says that this, and he's right, obviously he's right, this is timed for the 30th anniversary of her death.
Is that right? 30 years.
30 years. My goodness.
I was young. Crikey.
Yeah,
well, not that
I
young.
wasn't so young. That worries me slightly. But I'm nearly her age. And I remember, I was saying this morning that I remember being a trainee reporter on the Western Mail in Cardiff. That's the national newspaper of Wales. And she did her first tour in Wales at the time. And it was there, I just want to say, it was there that you actually realised just how massively popular she was.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you went up to the valleys to see what was going on, if you took an aerial shot, you could see massive crowds lining the streets on the side where she was, and almost no one on the side where the now king was. And so it became apparent to everyone how popular she had become almost immediately. And I think that that's a hallmark of her life. She didn't realise how powerful she was to start with. In fact, I was told by two very, very senior royal correspondents that she was very unhappy from the early days of that marriage. And she undoubtedly went through long periods of unhappiness, but she came to realise her own power. And with that, she did try very, very hard to do a tremendous amount of good for AIDS sufferers,
Which she did an amazing job with that.
Yeah.
Just the very fact, and I remember very, very vividly her holding the hand of HIV positive men who were very cacectic, and it really abolished the myth that you could catch it from touching someone with the disease.
Yeah, because we forget how scared people were
Terrified.
of AIDS at the time. It was called a gay plague, rather unpleasantly, and she did so much to sort that out. But I fear that in certain corners of the royal family and the royal household, there was tremendous unease about her popularity, and it made her, I think it made her life very difficult, and it made her unhappy. So I'll be very interested to see and to read what Earl Spencer says about her, because of course they started off with a very, very close relationship, because they came from a troubled childhood, a troubled household, if you like. Diana's mother was called a bolter because she ran off to South America with a partner, and in fact her father got custody of her, and that's when I believe her grandmother, Ruth Lady Fermoy, gave evidence in the divorce hearing that said that custody should go to Diana's father. So there was a lot of problems in their childhood, and they bonded over it. But there were various schisms as time went forward, and the main one centred on the fact that she wanted to live on the ancestral grounds where she grew up. And Earl Spencer thought the security risk was too high to allow that.
How interesting. I mean, it would be interesting to see what's actually in this book. And I know that the eulogy he gave at her funeral, or at the celebration, or whatever the service, was apparently extraordinary. So let's see what is in that book. But as you say, you've ordered a copy. I haven't yet, but I'll have a peek. Right. Also,
I'll just say very quickly, David, that I do a lot of media coaching and presentation coaching, so I've had to read various big speeches from historical figures.
Oh, yes.
And undoubtedly, that speech, that eulogy, it is included amongst the great speeches in modern history. So whatever you think, and I do think there was an element of guilt in that speech, because although they had reconciled by the time she died, there was, this, as I said, this schism. But it was, in many ways, a brilliantly written speech, and it was very well delivered. And if you remember when he made that speech and he finished, there was this rumble of applause in the congregation, and it rolled through the whole the whole of Westminster Abbey, and it was the crowd outside. They were on their feet in a massive standing ovation. So no doubt about it, as most great speeches do, that one hit the mark.
Wow. And finally, let's move on. I rather like this story. I found it quite by accident this morning. The King is in Balmoral. He's gone there for his summer residence, obviously. But he has essentially brought back the Highland Men-at-Arms. He's brought back these men-at-arms after, I think it was his great-grandfather, George V, abolished them in 1936. These men-at-arms, it's a new group that they've redone, and also new uniforms, new everything. I think it's rather brilliant, reviving tradition.
Yeah, I do. And he's... King Charles is a strange mixture of quite progressive thinking alongside very traditional things.
Yeah, very much so.
And this is a traditional thing that he has done, and I think it's a great thing to do for the Highlands. And I'd like to see him get alongside maybe more traditions. We need to make more of our identity as a country, not less of it. And one of the things we do best is ceremony, and all the stuff surrounding that. It is what drives this country forward in many respects, and it's at the heart of our patriotism.
I mean, yeah, amazing. So these new Highlanders wear a uniform taking inspiration from kilts worn in the 1800s. They are employees of the Balmoral estate. Brilliant. And he's been really busy, actually. He's been to the Castle of May Games, the Assynt Mountain Rescue Team. He's been to Halkirk and Castletown. He's been to a distillery. And that looks like a good gig.
Oh, yeah, I know. I've always wanted to go. I've always wanted to go to the Castle of May. I think that was the Queen Mother's home, and I think it's the it's the northernmost castle in the United Kingdom, and it's quite dramatic and quite beautiful. And it's obviously it has a special place in his heart because the Queen Mother was. Very, very close to her grandson.
Yeah, and I think Balmoral also has a very special place.
Yeah, if you think back to where the Queen died, it's where the Queen died, and where we saw the coffin coming down through Scotland before being put on the plane.
I just remember Liz Truss meeting the Queen there at Balmoral, I think in the final days of her life, actually. Linda, really good to talk to you. Thank you ever so much for your insight. That's Linda Turbley, who's a journalist. We'll take a break. After the break, your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk.
You doom mongers, you're just killjoys, aren't you?
That's just silly, isn't it? I'm not a doom monger. I'm a fact monger.
Yeah? Well, why can't people just enjoy the summer?
And 1,000 people are dead. And 20 people have lost their homes.
No, well, that's bad.
And
I agree with that.
the army has stretched me on breaking
But
point,
your
fighting over 1,000
your facts. You can't say 1,000 people have died because of climate change. That's right.
Well,
you
that's
laugh in a condescending
says.
way. You're making yourself look ridiculous. Don't blame me.
This is not a discussion. This is just a rant.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk Final Part with me, David Bull, standing in for Ian Collins. 7 minutes to 4. Right, let's take a call. Paul's on the line from Southampton. Good afternoon, Paul.
Afternoon, David. How are we doing?
Yeah, all right, thanks very much indeed. Crikey, the show's whizzed past this afternoon. Right, what would you like to talk about?
Well, you were talking about Tim Montgomery and losing his way, and as I said to the girl that answered the phone, it seems to be he's gone the way of Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, that old men that just can't shut them out.
So let me just explain for people. Tim Montgomery, who set up Conservative Home, he defected to Reform, I think, 2 years ago. He's done these interviews where he's pretty much dished the dirt on the internal workings of Reform UK, and you think that he's fallen into the same trap as Ben Habib?
Yeah, Ben Habib. I mean, he talks a lot of sense, Ben Habib, but he's starting to slag off Nigel and the way things are done. And you just don't do that. You don't do that in a company you work for, and you don't do it to, a party or a club. You knuckle down and get the job done.
So, it's a really interesting one. Obviously, I have no official position now. I have been involved with the party for a very long time. I would no more discuss the inner workings of that party on air than fly through the air, because, as you say, if you work for a company, there are expectations about your behaviour and what you do. Even when you leave the business, you would be expected to uphold that, and that would be in your, in your severance pay, for example.
Well, yeah, obviously he left with a flea in his ear, Ben Habib.
I get that.
And Rupert Lowe. So obviously they're going to be opposed to Nigel, what he's doing, how he's doing it. But, I just get so fed up. Reform are basically, as far as I'm concerned, the last chance we got of getting some normality back in this country.
Are you not... I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Are you not worried about the trend, though? You've got Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, now Tim Montgomery.
Trend of what?
Well, the trend that you've got people who've left the party, who are disaffected, who then all exhibit the same behaviour.
Well, I think it was quite ironic. I was listening to GB News the other night.
Yeah.
I've
heard of them.
Yeah. And Jacob Rees-Mogg warned Nigel that within the next 3 years, there's a possibility he could be arrested. And Nigel sort of looked... You remember that? And
I do, yeah.
To me, it seems like... And the Blob and the Uni Party are scared. They don't want us to have our country back.
That's quite interesting, because it does seem that Look, and I was there very closely until relatively recently, but it does seem that everything, and I mean everything, is being thrown at Reform UK right now. And it doesn't, even stuff, and I'll just go back, you know, even about the councillors, no other political party is subject to the scrutiny of the councillors as Reform UK was.
No, I mean, there's been a Labour MP that's just been lost the whip because of COVID inquiry.
Yeah, good point.
It was a passing comment. And if you look at the racism of some of the independent MPs, when David Guildford and all this football with the Jewish football team, all the lies and the deceit, it came and it's gone. But they seem to be going down every single wormhole to try and get something on Nigel and Zia. I mean, if Zia is a bit abrupt, then so what? You know, they tried to make something between him and Robert Jenrick when Jenrick was asked a question about migrants getting welfare. Robert said maybe, and then Zia posted, no, nobody's getting nothing. And then they've tried to say, oh, that is a split between Zia and Robert. No, it's not.
Well, so let me just throw back to you, Chloe, who was with me earlier on. She said, well, look, Tim Montgomery didn't hold an official position within the party. He's just a member. Now, surely a member is able to criticise the party that... I mean, he still says he's a supporter of the party. Could you argue that he's entitled to be a critical friend?
I think there's criticism and there's a time and a place for everything.
There is.
Like you say, he was not in anything to do with the organisation of the party. So he's basically like me. I would support reform, and I'm standing from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
And I can have my opinions on it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I've not heard what he said, and I just heard that people are going, oh, Tim Montgomery, he's a fine, upstanding chap. Is he? Is he? I mean, he's just another media person. And I just think, you know, what is this going on? You know, if he's got an opinion, it's like Julia doesn't like the fact that Nigel got this £5 million.
Right.
Her nose she doesn't like that, but that's her opinion.
It is.
And I don't care about this £5 million. I expect Nigel's got his own money.
I mean, that is the fascinating bit.